Douluo, I awakened the three-life martial soul. Chapter 1. At night. In front of a wooden house, a man and a woman were standing quietly. The man is dressed in white, with black hair and eyes, while the woman is dressed in blue, with dark blue hair and pupils. In the woman's arms, she was holding a baby. The baby was wrapped in gorgeous brocade cloth, and inside the brocade cloth was a delicate jade pendant. Brother Tian, do we really want to leave Xiao here? Looking at the baby in her arms, the woman's eyebrows were furrowed and her eyes were full of sadness, and she said, Xin, no one can tell what the place we are going to be like next. If it is safe, that's fine. But if it is dangerous, I may not even be able to protect you with my strength. If I take Xiaoye with me, then it hurt him. The man named Brother Tian sighed and said. But, without us around, what if Xiao is bullied? And in such a poor village, Xiao's future life will definitely be difficult. Why not keep Xiao in my family? As she spoke, Xin couldn't help but choked up. Seeing his wife crying, Brother Tian sighed and held his wife in his arms. Xin, don't worry. The person we entrust is the village chief. Xiaoye will definitely not be bullied. Moreover, with the excellent blood of you and me, plus the things I left for Xiaoye, Xiaoye will definitely be the only one to bully her. For other people's sake, no one can bully Xiaoye. As for staying in your family, we probably won't be able to come back once we leave. People are so different from each other. What if someone covets the things we left for Xiao? So it's better to let Xiao stay here, so that no one knows his true identity. When he grows up and leaves this village, he will be able to protect himself. According to the growth path I arranged for him, he will definitely find us in the future. After listening to her husband's words, Xin was silent for a moment, then accepted the reality. Her eyes turned red and said, Brother Tian, I understand, then let Xiaoye stay here. Seeing that his wife Xin finally accepted his arrangement, Brother Tian couldn't help but smile with relief. Having made a decision in her heart, Xin gently caressed the baby in her arms, walked to the door of the wooden house, carefully placed the baby on the ground, and then knocked on the door of the wooden house. Tuck, tuck, tuck. There was a crisp knock on the door. In the wooden house, an old voice suddenly came out, Who is it? Then, after a sound of getting out of bed, there was a sound of footsteps in the wooden house. Zhixin, it's time to go. Seeing Xin still looking at the baby on the ground with nostalgia, Brother Tian sighed, stepped forward and grabbed his wife, and pulled her to his side. Then, there seemed to be ripples in the air. Although the two people's eyes still stayed on the baby on the ground, the figure began to blur and finally disappeared from the spot. The next second, the door of the wooden house squeaked and was pushed open. A stooped, silver-haired old man opened the door full of doubts. Hey? Why is there a baby? Who put it here? Seeing the baby by the gate, the old man walked out of the wooden house full of doubts and picked up the baby. Touching the gorgeous brocade cloth wrapped around the baby in his arms, the workmanship and texture were obviously extraordinary. Coupled with the jade pendant placed in the brocade cloth, the old man couldn't help but be a little amazed. Such exquisite brocade and jade pendant. Did some nobleman put this child in my place? But why did he put it in my place? Did he want me to adopt him? The old man was a little puzzled. How strange. But since you want me to adopt you, then I promise you that a child of a noble may have a chance to awaken his martial soul and become a soul master in the future. As if he thought of something, the old man couldn't help but smile. Taking out the jade pendant from the brocade and reading the words on it, the old man looked at the baby in his arms with a kind face. My child, is your name Lin yet? My name is Jack, and I will be your grandfather from now on. 6 years later. Tiandu Empire, Fanos Province, Holy Soul Village. In the early morning, the sky was still dark, and the entire Holy Soul Village was still shrouded in a white mist, with wooden houses of different sizes looming in the mist. In a wooden house, with a creak, the door of the wooden house was pushed open, and a little boy walked out of the wooden house. This is a little boy with black hair and black eyes. He looks to be about 6 or 7 years old. He has a well-proportioned figure, fair skin, and handsome appearance, but his face is slightly cold. After pushing the door open, the little boy closed the door. An old voice came from the room, Xiao, remember to come back early. The Soul Master from the Wuhan branch hall in Notting City will come to our village today to hold the Wuhan awakening ceremony, so don't be late. I know, Grandpa. The little boy nodded calmly, answered, then turned and left the cabin. All the way out of the village, the little boy walked towards the back mountain. When passing by the west side of the village, a little boy of the same age also walked out of the village. This is a little boy who is about 6 or 7 years old, wearing linen clothes, with black hair, black eyes, wheat-colored skin, and ordinary appearance. Seeing Lin Yat, the little boy smiled and said, "Hello, Lin Yat, do you get up so early every day to exercise?" "Well, Tang San, isn't it the same for you too?" Lin Yat nodded slightly and responded. "This is different, I'm older than you." Tang San smiled. Yes, he is indeed older than Lin Yat. This not only refers to physical age, but also mental age. Although he appears to be a 6 or 7-year-old child, in fact, he has memories of past lives, and if calculated based on his mental age, he is almost in his 30s. But Lin Yat in front of him was just a normal child. He got up so early every day to exercise. Even adults may not have such strong self-control, let alone a child? How could this not amaze him? The two of them chatted on the road, and finally after arriving at the foot of the back mountain, they chose to separate and head towards 2 different peaks on the back mountain. After they separated, Lin Yat walked along a path to the left side of the back mountain. After passing through a lush sea of flowers, he finally reached a steep hillside. This is a hillside with a slope of almost over 70 degrees. Not to mention children, even adults found it extremely difficult to climb up. But looking at the hillside in front of him, Lin Yat looked calm and did not feel afraid at all. Boom! With a sudden kick of his right foot on the ground, Lin Yi's body suddenly shot up into the sky, one foot firmly planted on the hillside, as if rooted, and his right hand quickly reached out and grabbed the raised stone above. And then kicked off again, leaping into the air and quickly climbing up the hillside. It is hard to imagine that a little boy who is only 6 or 7 years old can have such skills. Climbing as fast as a monkey, in just a few breaths, Lin Yat climbed up a steep hillside more than 10 meters high and reached the top of the mountain. Chapter 2. Reached the top of the mountain. It is surrounded by green grass and large grey-white stones. Looking around, there is an endless green forest under the cliff in front of you. Sitting cross-legged on a grey-white stone, Lin Yat closed his eyes facing the morning sun and began to breathe. It could be vaguely seen that a faint stream of air was continuously being swallowed in and out by Lin Yat, forming a perfect cycle. It still doesn't work. Why can't my 9 Yang divine art break through the first heaven? It's obvious that the true energy in my body has reached the limit that the first heaven can hold. After a long time, Lin Yat suddenly opened his eyes. Looking at his white hands, Lin Yat frowned, and a trace of doubt flashed in his bright eyes. Is it because I haven't awakened that martial spirit Grandpa mentioned yet? I heard that after you awaken your martial soul and become a soul master, your strength will reach a bottleneck after it reaches a certain limit. You must absorb something called a soul ring before you can continue to practice. This situation is somewhat similar to my current situation. Thinking of the magical power of martial arts that his grandfather Jack had always said, Lin Yat was thoughtful. 9 Yang magic, this is a kind of skill that Lin Yat is currently practicing. The information that suddenly appeared in his mind was introduced like this. Lin Yat didn't learn this skill from anyone, but when he was 3 years old, Lin Yat was playing with the jade pendant he had been wearing since he was a child. The jade pendant suddenly shot out a stream of light and hit Lin Yi's head, and then this skill called 9 Yang divine skill appeared in Lin Yi's mind inexplicably. By practicing the 9 Yang divine art, Lin Yat produced a strange energy called 9 Yang true qi in his body. This energy circulates in the body, giving Lin Yat a physical quality that is different from ordinary people since he was a child. Whether it is strength, speed, or reaction ability, Lin Yat is far superior to adults. In addition to blessing the body, Yang Qi also has many other functions. For example, it can produce the most yang energy, so that Lin Yat will not feel cold even if he only wears a thin shirt in winter. It can also enhance physical fitness and prevent the body from all kinds of diseases. Protect the body, making it difficult to be harmed by swords, and even rebound some less powerful attacks. Because of the 9 Sun magic skill, Lin Yat was very interested in the jade pendant he had worn since childhood. In order to explore the purpose of the jade pendant, Lin Yat used many methods, and finally discovered that injecting the 9 Yang true qi into the jade pendant could trigger a certain energy barrier. Lin Yat had a feeling in his heart that if he could break the barrier in the jade pendant, he might be able to gain something, like other martial arts similar to 9 Yang magic. But regarding the energy barrier in the jade pendant, Lin Yat clearly felt that the true energy in his body had been able to break it, but it seemed that some key element was missing, always just the last bit missing, and ultimately failed. Based on the information he received from his grandfather, Jack, Lin Ye felt that the reason why he could not break the energy barrier in the jade pendant was probably because he had not yet awakened his martial spirit. The martial soul awakening ceremony will be held today. If the martial soul can be awakened, my guess can be verified. Lin Ye thought to himself. In addition to verifying his suspicions after awakening his martial spirit, Lin Ye actually had another purpose, which was to explore his own life experience. Lin Ye was not Grandpa Old Jack's biological grandson. According to Grandpa Old Jack, he picked up Lin Ye accidentally. After hearing the knock on the door, he picked Lin Ye up outside the door. At that time, Lin Ye's body was wrapped in gorgeous brocade. Ordinary people would never be able to afford such brocade, so Old Jack guessed that Lin Ye's life experience must be very complicated. But because Old Jack had never met Lin Ye's biological parents, everything was just speculation. The only thing that could prove Lin Ye's identity was the jade pendant on Lin Ye's body. Originally, Lin Ye thought this jade pendant was just an ordinary identification card. But since he obtained the 9 Yang divine art, Lin Ye felt that this was probably not the case. This jade pendant was definitely not just a proof of identity, but a treasure that could reveal his identity. Since the jade pendant can bring him the 9 Yang magic skill, it will definitely be able to leave information about his parents. The reason why it does not appear now is definitely because he is not strong enough and has not yet met his parents' requirements. Lin Ye firmly believed that his parents definitely did not abandon him. If he abandoned him, it would be impossible to put him on the doorstep of Grandpa Jack's house and let him be adopted by Grandpa Jack. Instead, he must have encountered some kind of difficulty and had to let others raise him. And this jade pendant is the clue left to him by his parents. The energy barrier left in the jade pendant is also evidence. Although he can only perceive one energy barrier now, there are probably more. In the future, as long as he keeps breaking the energy barrier, he can get more things. In addition to techniques like the 9 Yang divine art, there must be other more valuable treasures. As long as his strength reaches a certain limit, he might be able to get the news left by his parents. And to be able to leave him such a magical jade pendant, his parents must not be ordinary people on the mainland. They are probably extremely powerful soul masters in the legend. As long as he awakens his martial soul and becomes a soul master, he will come into contact with more people and things during his soul master training in the future, and he will definitely get news about his parents. It's getting late, it's time to go back. After practicing the 9 Yang magic skill, he looked at the sky and saw that it was getting late. Lin Ye stood up and prepared to go down the mountain and go home. After descending the mountain with great skill, Lin Ye returned to the village. When he got home, his grandfather Jack had already prepared the meal and brought it to the table. Eat quickly, I have to go to meet the soul master of the Wuhan Soul Hall later. Seeing Lin Ye go home, old Jack sat at the table and urged. Don't worry, Grandpa, I eat quickly. Lin Ye answered, sitting next to old Jack, picking up the rice bowl and chopsticks. Because they had to welcome the soul masters who came to hold the martial arts awakening ceremony, Lin Ye and old Jack both ate very quickly and finished their meals in less than 10 minutes. Okay, let's go to the village and wait. The soul master from Wuhan Palace should be arriving soon. Old Jack said after looking at the sky outside. After finishing the meal, old Jack did not wash the dishes, but put the plates and bowls into the pot, filled it with water, covered the pot lid, and then prepared to take Lin Ye to the village head to meet the troops from the Nodding City Wuhan branch. The Soul Master. The two left the house and went all the way to the end of the Holy Soul village. At this time, the sun was about to rise, and the weather was starting to get hotter. Standing under the shade of the trees, while waiting, a figure slowly walked over on the road in the distance. This is a young man, who looks to be in his 20s, with a tall and straight figure, sharp eyebrows and starry eyes, handsome appearance, and is wearing a grey and white uniform. On the left chest of the young man, there is a fist-sized soul character, and on the right chest, there is a badge engraved with a long sword. There are a total of 3 intertwined long swords on the badge. Because of the popularity of Grandpa Old Jack, Lin Ye knew that the number of swords on this badge represented the strength of the young man in front of him, which was the 3rd level title of Soul Master, Great Soul Master. The long sword represents the development direction of this young Soul Master, which is to become a fighting Soul Master. Soul Master, this is the state that some people who have awakened their martial souls and have a power called soul power within their bodies can achieve through practice. This kind of practice should be similar to the practice of their own 9 Yang divine art. According to the realm, there are 10 realms of soul masters, namely Soul Warrior, Soul Master, Great Soul Master, Soul Sect, Soul King, Soul Emperor, Soul Saint, Soul Douluo, and titled Douluo. According to legend, a powerful high-level Soul Master can defeat an army head-on, and has the ability to determine the rise and fall of a country. This kind of power is what Lin Ye has always longed for and longed for. Dear Soul Master, you are here. Seeing the young man, old Jack bowed respectfully and greeted him. No need to be polite, let's go in earlier. After the martial arts ceremony for your village, I have to rush to other villages. The young man took a few steps forward to greet him, helped old Jack up, and said calmly. Yes, respected fighting spirit master. Old Jack was still respectful. Chapter 3. Under the leadership of old Jack. The three of them entered the village from the village head and walked all the way towards the Wuhan branch hall in the middle of the village. Although the name of the Wuhan branch hall in Holy Soul village sounds very glorious and majestic, in fact Lin Ye has seen it before, and it is just a slightly larger wooden house. After all, Holy Soul village is just a village. The villagers' life is barely enough for food and clothing, and they don't have much surplus. It is impossible to build this so-called Wuhan branch hall so magnificently, even if this Wuhan branch hall has great symbolic significance. Arriving at the Wuhan branch hall in the center of the village. Because Grandpa Old Jack had warned a few days ago that the Wuhan awakening would be held today, so most of the children of the right age to participate in the Wuhan awakening were already here and were playing in front of the Wuhan branch hall. However, seeing Old Jack arriving, all the children quickly stopped playing and stood in a row on the grass in front of the Wuhan branch hall. Grandpa, it seems Tang San hasn't come yet. Looking at all the children on the grass, Lin Ye discovered that Tang San, whom he met this morning, had not arrived yet, so he couldn't help but whisper to his grandfather, Old Jack. The mistress is a good boy. I told him what happened today. If there is no accident, he will definitely not be late. It is definitely because Tang Hao got up late again. Old Jack put the crutch in his hand on the ground angrily. Tang Hao, Lin Ye knew, was Tang San's father and the only blacksmith in Holy Soul village. However, unlike most fathers in the village, Tang Hao was particularly irresponsible. Not only did he drink alcohol all day long, but he was also not engaged in production. Almost all the money he earned every day was used to buy wine. In addition, he did not farm, which often led to Tang San had no food to eat, not even porridge to drink. If it weren't for his family's support, Tang San would have starved to death long ago. Lin Ye was particularly contemptuous of Tang Hao. This man simply insulted the image of father in his mind. Grandpa, do you want me to call Tang San? Lin Ye asked in a low voice. You stay here and I'll go call him. This guy Tang Hao is not very nice and has a bad temper. It's better for me to go. Old Jack shook his head. Dear War Spirit Master, there is still a child who is not coming for the spirit awakening in our village. Can I call him over? After discussing with Lin Ye, Old Jack turned around and looked at the young soul master next to him, and asked respectfully. Go ahead and remember to hurry up. The young man had actually heard the whispered conversation between Old Jack and Lin Ye, so he naturally chose to agree. Then I'll leave first. If you have anything, Master, you can ask my grandson Lin Ye, and he will tell you. Before leaving, Old Jack said respectfully again, then turned and left. After Old Jack left, the young man and Lin Ye very came to the Wuhan branch hall. Lin Ye entered the team, and the young man came to the door of the Wuhan branch hall, with his right hand on his back, looking calmly into the distance, and looking at the team from time to time. 10 minutes later, Old Jack finally came over from a distance with Tang San. Dear War Spirit Master, I have kept you waiting for a long time. After bringing Tang San, Old Jack panted slightly, came to the young man's side again, and bowed to him. It doesn't matter. The young man's expression remained calm. Okay, now that everyone is here, come in with me. After Old Jack brought everyone here, the young man said as he turned around and pushed open the door of the Wuhan branch hall and walked in. Tang San, didn't my grandfather tell you a few days ago, why are you still late today? Before entering the Wuhan branch hall, Lin Ye couldn't help but frown and asked. Sorry, Dad was drunk yesterday, so he got up a little late today. Tang San scratched his head and said apologetically. Regarding Tang San's answer, Lin Ye could only shake his head helplessly. When it comes to this father, he feels that Tang San is really unlucky. Tang Hao does nothing except blacksmithing. Tang San does all the chores at home. I heard that Tang San does all the cooking. Tang San's height, but it's not as high as the stove. Entered the Wuhan branch hall. The young soul master sent by the Wuhan hall has arrived at the table at the front of the Wuhan branch hall. He took off the package he was carrying on his back and put it on the table. He took out a faint blue crystal ball from it, and he took out 6 more black round stones and placed them on the ground in the shape of a 6-pointed star. Okay, everyone, line up in a row from left to right in order of height. After doing everything, the young man stood up from the ground, clapped his hands, and said loudly to Lin Ye and others. Hearing the young man's words, the 9 children participating in the martial arts awakening immediately took action and rearranged themselves into a row in order of height. Among them, Lin Ye was the tallest, so he was placed on the far right, while Tang San was the second tallest, so he was placed on the left of Lin Ye. Seeing everyone taking their positions quickly, the young man couldn't help but smile, nodded with satisfaction, and said gently, "Very good. Now let me introduce myself. My name is Su Yun Tao. I am a 26th level Great Soul Master and a Martial Soul Lone Wolf. Next, I will guide you to awaken your martial soul. Please pay attention. Whatever you want to see later, don't be afraid of anything, got it?" "No." Everyone answered in unison, but they didn't take it seriously. It was just a martial soul awakening. What terrible things could happen? However, after hearing the words of this great soul master named Su Yun Tao, Lin Ye felt a little solemn in his heart. He and the great soul master named Su Yun Tao walked together for a long time. In front of Grandpa Old Jack, the great soul master Su Yun Tao always behaved very seriously. Although the great soul master Su Yun Tao behaved very gently in front of these children, this was just because they were children. In essence, the character of the great soul master Su Yun Tao had definitely not changed and he would not let go without any reason. Arrow. So will something terrible really happen later? Just when Lin Ye was confused, in front of the Wuhan branch hall, Su Yun Tao suddenly shouted, "Lone Wolf, possessed." Suddenly, a terrifying aura suddenly burst out from Su Yun Tao's body. Along with a faint wolf howl, a black and purple wolf shadow suddenly emerged from Su Yun Tao's body, and then disappeared into Su Yun Tao's body in an instant. In vivo. As the purple wolf shadow entered the body, Su Yun Tao's body suddenly changed. The muscles throughout his body expanded at a speed visible to the naked eye, and his figure began to grow taller. Thick black and purple hair continued to grow from the back of his hands, sharp claws popped out from between his fingers, and his eyes instantly turned into a dark green like wolf eyes. Roar! After the transformation was completed, Su Yun Tao suddenly let out a ferocious roar at Lin Ye and others. Along with the ferocious wolf howl, there was also an inexplicable force with a strange sense of oppression. Seeing Su Yun Tao's ferocious appearance after transformation, under the impact of the howling wolf and the inexplicable strange power, all the children except Lin Ye and Tang San couldn't help but slump to the ground with a look of fear on their faces, and howled like ghosts. While constantly retreating. "Monster! Don't eat me! Wow! I want mommy! Don't come over! Don't come over!" Lin Ye was also startled when faced with Su Yun Tao's sudden ferocious wolf howl and the sudden burst of strange power. However, Lin Ye had always had a strong heart, so he did not act too embarrassed. The hairs all over his body just stood up, and the 9 yang qi in his body began to circulate rapidly, and he resolved the strange energy impact on his own initiative. However, after regaining his composure, Lin Ye suddenly noticed that Tang San beside him was not intimidated, but his whole body tensed up nervously. Is it because of a strong heart or some other reason? Simply having a strong psychological quality shouldn't be enough. Ordinary people can't resist the impact of that strange power. I have the 9 yang magic to protect my body. Could it be that Tang San has a similar skill? I've never heard of it. Lin Ye was a little surprised. These 2 children. On the other side, Su Yun Tao couldn't help but be a little surprised when he saw that Lin Ye and Tang San were not intimidated by his sudden test. The roar he just made was not random, but had a purpose. After being possessed by a martial spirit, his roars were accompanied by soul power shocks. Under his roars, it was difficult for even adults to remain calm. A child around 6 years old, unless he has a stronger martial soul to protect his body than his lone wolf, will usually be frightened to the ground. This is the soul master responsible for awakening the martial soul in the Wuhan Palace to detect the qualification of a soul master. One of the means for children. I'm not even intimidated. Could it be that my career has finally paid off? Su Yuntao couldn't help but feel a little surprised. Chapter 4. Looking at Lin Ye and Tang San, Su Yuntao felt a little hopeful. But as a respected fighting spirit master, Su Yuntao still had a calm expression on his face. With his right hand behind his back, he said calmly to the frightened children in front of him. Didn't I say, don't be afraid? This is a normal phenomenon after being possessed by a beast spirit. If any of you can become a beast spirit master in the future, you will also have similar abilities. After hearing Su Yuntao's words and thinking of the various strange martial arts spirits in the legend, the children finally regained their composure and stood up from the ground cautiously. However, Lin Ye was speechless at Su Yuntao's words. Although he did not deny that the beast transformation of Master Su Yuntao just now might be related to the beast martial spirit named Lone Wolf that he had mentioned. But the change in image after transformation into a beast is not the key to causing fear, but the roar of the master just now and the strange energy impact. This can't be brought about by the beast spirit, right? Lin Ye had practiced the Nine Yang divine art, and he felt that the soul master's soul power should be similar to his infuriating energy, and it was absolutely impossible for him to send out that kind of energy impact for no reason. The master Su Yuntao in front of me must be hiding something, but what was the purpose of his roar? It shouldn't be to scare them, could it be a test? An idea flashed in Lin Ye's mind. Glancing at Su Yuntao, Lin Ye noticed that the way Su Yuntao looked at him and Tang San was obviously different from the others just now, and his eyes seemed to be more pleased and satisfied. Lin Ye confirmed his guess in his mind. Okay, let's start the martial soul awakening now. While Lin Ye was guessing, Su Yuntao said when he saw that all the children had regained their composure. Come here. After saying that, Su Yuntao pointed directly at the first boy on the left and asked him to walk into the six-pointed star formation composed of 6 black round stones in front of him. Hearing Su Yuntao's words, although the first boy was a little scared, he still stepped forward and carefully walked into the 6-pointed star array. Seeing the boy enter the 6-pointed star formation, Su Yuntao immediately flapped his hands rapidly. With the rapid flapping of his hands, 6 green lights were shot out by Su Yuntao and injected into the 6 black round stones on the ground. Suddenly, countless golden light spots suddenly escaped from the round stone and poured into the body of the little boy in the 6-pointed star. Close your eyes and feel the martial spirit in your body. After hearing Su Yuntao's words, the little boy slowly closed his eyes, as if he was sensing something. As everyone watched curiously, time passed by bit. 10 seconds later, seeing fewer and fewer golden light spots pouring into the little boy's body, Su Yuntao couldn't help but shouted, "Summon your martial spirit!" With Su Yuntao's low drink, the little boy suddenly opened his eyes as if waking up from a dream. His right hand unconsciously spread out, and a small sickle that seemed to be between illusion and reality quickly appeared on the little boy's head. Palm. Sickle? Is it a weapon spirit? It barely has some attack power. Seeing that the little boy awakened with a sickle, Su Yuntao frowned a little, but still took the faint blue crystal ball on the table next to him and handed it to the little boy. Put your hand on it and test your soul power. After hearing Su Yuntao's words, the little boy obediently put his left hand on the crystal ball, but unfortunately, nothing happened. Without soul power, you are not qualified to become a soul master. Seeing that the crystal ball did not emit light, Su Yuntao sighed with some disappointment and said, "Can't I become a soul master?" The little boy opened his mouth wide, then lowered his head in disappointment, and walked out of the Wuhan branch hall lonely. Seeing the little boy's leaving figure, Su Yuntao shook his head with some sympathy in his heart. But on Douluo continent, it was too difficult for ordinary people to awaken the martial soul. He had been responsible for the awakening of the martial soul for some time and was already used to it. Next. After the first little boy, people continued to awaken martial arts spirits one after another. From the first awakened sickle, others later awakened martial arts spirits such as wooden sticks, hoes, rakes, etc., all of which were agricultural tools, and there was also a girl who awakened the blue-silver grass that can be seen everywhere. This was even more so by Su Yun. Tao called it a useless martial spirit. After watching Wuhan awakening 6 or 7 times and listening to Su Yuntao's comments, Lin Ye also understood the conditions for becoming a soul master. If you want to become a soul master, awakening the martial soul is only the most basic step. After awakening the martial soul, you must touch the blue crystal ball and make the crystal ball shine before you are qualified to become a soul master. But what does it take for a crystal ball to shine? According to Su Yuntao's words, Lin Ye knew that it should have soul power. Martial spirits seem to be divided into strong and weak ones. Like the people of the same age in the previous village, the awakened martial spirits are farm tools and blue-silver grass. They are very weak martial spirits, so they cannot produce soul power. Only powerful martial spirits can generate soul power and become a soul master. But things like soul power are too dependent on martial arts and have too many limitations. The legendary effects of soul power are also possessed by my own 9 Yang Qi. So can 9 Yang Qi also be regarded as soul power, or can it replace soul power? Lin Ye couldn't help but think in his mind. Next. After the third to last child left the Wuhan branch hall in despair, it was Tang San's turn next, and Su Yun Tao couldn't help but feel a little hopeful. In the previous tests, only the child in front of me and the child named Lin Ye passed the test, so these two children are likely to be qualified to become soul masters. Hearing Su Yun Tao's words, Tang San took a step forward and walked into the hexagram array composed of 6 round stones. Su Yun Tao took back his thoughts and began to quickly flap his hands, shooting 6 green lights into 6 black pebbles. Just like before, countless golden light spots immediately escaped from the boulder and continued to pour into Tang San's body. There seems to be some hope. Countless golden light spots continued to pour into Tang San's body, and the time passed unknowingly for more than a minute, and there was still no sign of stopping, which made Su Yun Tao even more excited. Finally, the golden light spots finally stopped pouring in, and Su Yun Tao couldn't help but said with a little eagerness in his tone, "Summoned your martial spirit." After hearing Su Yun Tao's words, Tang San paused slightly, and then stretched out his left hand. With a flash of light, a small blue grass appeared in Tang San's hand, swaying gently. How is it possible? It's actually blue-silver grass. Seeing that Tang San actually awakened the blue-silver grass martial spirit, Su Yun Tao couldn't believe it. You know, the child in front of you has been in the guidance formation for so long, how could he have awakened a useless martial spirit like Lan Yinko? Although he didn't want to believe it, the facts were right in front of him and there was no room for refutation. This made Su Yun Tao, who was originally full of expectations, extremely disappointed at this moment. Test your soul power. With a disappointed look on his face, Su Yun Tao took the crystal ball for testing soul power, sighed, and handed it to Tang San. Tang San took the crystal ball and put his right hand on it. Su Yun Tao thought nothing would happen, but suddenly, the blue crystal ball burst into dazzling light. What? How is it possible? This is actually full of innate soul power. Su Yun Tao's expression changed drastically. Chapter 5. Inside an empty wooden building. A dazzling light suddenly burst out from the blue crystal ball, illuminating the entire Wuhan branch hall, causing Su Yun Tao, who was originally disappointed, to be shocked. How is it possible? It turns out to be full of innate soul power. How can a useless martial spirit like Lan Yinko have full innate soul power? In Douluo continent, there are very few people who can awaken martial souls and possess soul power. An innate full soul power is even rarer, and has always only appeared in some powerful martial souls. But blue-silver grass is obviously a waste martial soul, and not even one of the 10,000 blue-silver grass soul masters may have soul power. How could such a useless martial soul have innate full soul power? Everything he saw in front of him simply overturned Su Yun Tao's cognition. Uncle, what is the innate soul power? After hearing Su Yun Tao's words, Tang San couldn't help but ask. Full innate soul power is the highest soul power that a soul master can possess when his martial soul awakens. Generally speaking, the higher the innate soul power, the faster the acquired cultivation speed will be. Su Yun Tao explained. But even though you were born with full soul power, your martial soul turned out to be blue-silver grass. A useless martial soul like blue-silver grass has too low potential, and its growth ability is simply pitiful. If your martial soul was something else, even if it's a stick or a sickle, I can still, hey. As if thinking of something, Su Yun Tao couldn't help but sigh with regret. As a 26th level Great Soul Master, Su Yun Tao's strength is nothing when looking at the entire continent. But in Nodding City, Su Yun Tao's level 26 strength can be regarded as one of the few masters. With Su Yun Tao's strength, he doesn't have to be responsible for such a thankless task as martial soul awakening, but Su Yun Tao still chose to take charge of the martial soul awakening matter and went to the villages near Nodding City to conduct martial soul awakening for school-age children. There are natural reasons for this. That is, if when the martial soul awakens, if a soul master with strong potential can be awakened and brought into the martial soul hall, the better the soul master's martial soul is and the higher the innate soul power, Su Yun Tao can join the martial arts. The soul hall will receive corresponding rewards. Tang San's innate soul power was full of soul power. If it weren't for a useless martial soul like Lan Yunko, even an ordinary stick or sickle, if it could be pulled into the martial soul hall, Su Yun Tao would be able to gain a lot of money. Award. But it was a pity that Tang San's martial spirit was actually blue silver grass, a famous useless martial spirit. This made Su Yun Tao sigh. Uncle. Tang San wanted to ask something else, but unfortunately Su Yun Tao no longer had the intention to answer Tang San's questions. Instead, he waved his hand half-heartedly and said, "Go down, there is another child who needs to awaken his martial soul." Hearing Su Yun Tao's words, Tang San shut his mouth, exited the Wuhan guiding array, and walked aside. "Kid, it's your turn." Seeing Tang San leave, Su Yun Tao couldn't help but look at Lin Ye again, with some expectation hidden in his eyes. As a child who passed his test, the potential of the child named Lin Ye in front of him should be similar to the previous child, right? The last one who awakened had full innate soul power. Even if this one is a little bit inferior, he must have innate levels of 7 or 8, right? As long as the martial spirit is not blue silver grass, even if it is a sickle, a hoe, a rake. As long as his innate soul power is high enough, if he can be drawn into the spirit hall, he can get a lot of rewards. Under Su Yun Tao's slightly expectant eyes, Lin Ye walked into the Wuhan Awakening formation with a calm expression. Seeing Lin Ye performing the Wuhan Awakening formation, Su Yun Tao quickly clapped his hands again, and 6 green lights suddenly emitted from his hands and were driven into 6 black pebbles. In an instant, countless golden light spots continued to escape from the round stone and poured into Lin Yi's body. So warm and comfortable. Standing in the Wuhan Awakening formation, with the continuous influx of golden light spots around him, Lin Ye felt a strange warm current pouring into his body. The warm current continued to circulate in his body, making Lin Ye feel as if his whole body had been soaked in a hot spring. He felt relaxed and couldn't help but close his eyes. It seemed vaguely that something was coming out of his body. It seems that this child also has hope. Discovering that golden light spots continued to pour into Lin Yi's body without stopping for several minutes, there were actually more golden light spots pouring into Lin Yi's body than the previous Tang San. Su Yun Tao couldn't help but look forward to it again. It seems that this child's innate soul power should not be low. The last one was blue silver grass. He couldn't be as unlucky as this one, right? Su Yun Tao thought in his mind. Summon your martial spirit. Nearly 10 minutes later, seeing fewer and fewer golden light spots pouring into Lin Yi's body, Su Yun Tao couldn't help but let out a low drink. This low drink was mixed with soul power and instantly awakened Lin Yi's consciousness. But when he heard Su Yun Tao's voice, Lin Ye opened his eyes, but his brows couldn't help but frown slightly, as if he was thinking about something. After a moment, Lin Ye opened his left hand. As a ray of light flashed, a white begonia flower appeared in Lin Yi's hand. This is a flower? Begonia flower. Seeing the white begonia flowers emerging from Lin Yi's hand, Su Yun Tao couldn't help but be a little stunned. This is indeed not blue silver grass, but a flower. What's the use of it? Is it used as a decoration in a noble's home? Come on, another useless martial soul. Su Yun Tao made a judgment in his heart and couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. He had never heard of any powerful soul master whose martial soul was made of flowers. After making a judgment on Lin Yi's martial spirit and confirming that it was a waste martial spirit, Su Yun Tao concluded that Lin Yi's martial spirit might not have soul power. I was able to pass the test before, maybe just because my physical fitness was better. But the last Lan Yunko had awakened his soul power, and he was still innately full of soul power. This might be possible. Anyway, he had already awakened his martial soul, and it was only a few seconds before he could test his soul power. Thinking in his mind, Su Yun Tao couldn't help but sigh, took the crystal ball on the table next to him, and handed it to Lin Ye, who seemed to be deep in thought. Test your soul power. Lin Ye nodded calmly, took the crystal ball, and placed his right hand on the crystal ball. As Lin Ye put his right hand against the crystal ball, a strong suction force suddenly came from the crystal ball. Lin Yi's 9 yang qi was sucked into the crystal ball, and the crystal ball suddenly bloomed. A dazzling light. Brush. A bright light burst out suddenly, illuminating the entire Wuhan branch hall and shocking Su Yun Tao. The last blue silver grass, which was born with full soul power, had already shocked Su Yun Tao inexplicably. This time, another Huahuahun with innate soul power appeared. For a moment, Su Yuntao didn't know whether he was extremely good or extremely unlucky. There are two useless martial souls with full innate soul power in a row. Could it be that the rules that their martial soul hall has always summarized are wrong? Chapter 6. It turns out to be another person with innate soul power. Su Yuntao muttered to himself blankly. But it's a pity that it's another useless martial soul. As if thinking of something, Su Yuntao couldn't help but sigh. What happened today was so dramatic that it overturned Su Yuntao's cognition. Su Yuntao may never forget what happened today. Feeling regretful in his heart, Su Yuntao took out 2 pieces of special parchment from the package. He began to register Lin Ye and Tang San's information, including their names, martial spirits, and innate soul power. For Lin Yi's martial spirit, Su Yuntao registered begonia flower, while for Tang San's martial spirit, Su Yuntao registered blue silver grass. This is the proof of your martial arts. You two are both innately full of soul power. This is simply rare in Douluo continent. Unfortunately, your martial arts are useless martial souls with little development prospects. If it's not a useless martial spirit, even if it's just a martial spirit with a little attack power like a sickle or a hoe, your innate soul power will be enough to make you a strong person. After handing the written martial spirit certificate to Lin Ye and Tang San, Su Yuntao couldn't help but feel very complicated. After Lin Ye and Tang San received the martial arts certificates, Su Yuntao turned around and packed his things, put the 6 black round stones and the blue crystal ball into the package, and then prepared to leave. By the way, it's best to leave your martial spirit certificates to your village chief for safekeeping. If you want to study at the Soul Master Academy in the future, I'm afraid you will need your village chief's help. Before leaving, Su Yuntao turned around and said something, and then walked out of the Wuhan branch hall. As soon as he walked out of the Wuhan branch, old Jack couldn't wait to greet him and asked, "Dear Soul Master, is there anyone in our village who is qualified to become a Soul Master this year?" "Yes, there are, and there are 2 of them, and both are innately full of soul power." As if thinking of something, Su Yuntao sighed, his eyes a little complicated. Two? Or are you innately full of soul power?" Hearing Su Yuntao's words, old Jack couldn't help but feel a little dizzy. He was so excited. "Hey! But it's a pity that they are all useless martial spirits. One is blue silver grass and the other is begonia flower. Village chief, you should also understand that these are 2 useless martial spirits with almost no fighting ability." Su Yuntao shook his head. "Abandoned martial soul? I know, but even if it is a useless martial soul, the innate soul power is still enough to become a soul master." Old Jack was stunned for a moment, and then he couldn't help but sigh. It's definitely possible to become a soul master. Su Yuntao nodded, "Okay, I won't say more. I have to go to other villages to awaken my martial soul, so I will leave first." After saying that, Su Yuntao jumped up, starting from the Wuhan branch hall, and quickly passed over the roofs of the wooden houses, and disappeared into the distance in almost the blink of an eye. After Su Yuntao left, Lin Ye and Tang San finally walked out of the Wuhan branch hall. Xiaosan, how are you? What martial spirits have you awakened?" Seeing Lin Ye and Tang San, old Jack couldn't help stroking his long beard and walked over on crutches. "What I awakened was the begonia flower." Lin Ye responded softly, but his eyes were slightly thoughtful. "Grandpa Jack, even if you have a useless martial soul, you can still become a soul master as long as you have full innate soul power, right?" Tang San did not immediately answer old Jack's words, but frowned slightly and asked. "Of course. As long as you have soul power, you will be qualified to become a soul master in the future. However, the higher the innate soul power, the faster you can become a soul master. If you are born with full soul power, you can become a soul master now. However, if you want to become a soul master, you must absorb something called a soul ring. But I don't know what a soul ring is. I just heard that it works with soul beasts. Related." Old Jack answered patiently, and at the end, he couldn't help but shake his head. "Xiaosan, just now the master said that there are 2 innate soul powers in our village. One martial soul is begonia flower, and the other is blue silver grass. Xiao's martial soul is begonia flower. Isn't your martial soul blue silver grass?" "Silver grass, right." As if he thought of something, old Jack couldn't help but asked in surprise. "Hey! You are born with full soul power, but your martial soul is blue silver grass?" "Xiaosan, your talent is so good, it's a pity that Gai Tanghao didn't pass on a good martial soul to you, what a pity. Old Jack couldn't help but feel a little regretful. But don't worry, you two are innately full of soul power, and you will definitely become soul masters in the future. Grandpa, I will definitely let you go to a special soul master academy to learn the methods of cultivating martial souls and all kinds of soul master knowledge. Grandpa, I remember there is only one place for work-study students in our village. On the side, Lin Ye couldn't help but asked with some doubts. Because of his curiosity about Wuhan, Lin Ye liked to ask old Jack all kinds of things about Wuhan since he was a child. Basically, Lin Ye knew all the news about Wuhan and soul masters that old Jack knew, and the work-study students were no exception. Work-study students, this is a special system of Soul Master Academy. Because the cost of the Soul Master Academy is very expensive, whether it is the registration fee or daily room and board expenses, ordinary civilians cannot afford it, so the work-study student system was derived. Work-study students can enroll in Soul Master Academy for free, and earn money by helping the school deal with some sundries, such as cleaning. Although the money earned is not much, it is enough for daily meals. This is Soul Master Academy's support. Special treatment for ordinary civilians. But such a quota is often shared by several villages. Because Holy Soul Village once produced a soul saint, it can have one each year. However, there is only one quota. How can two people go to the Soul Master Academy to study together? Haha, don't worry. Although our Holy Soul Village only has one quota for work-study students, in a village like ours, there are very few people who can become awakened martial souls and become soul masters. Even our Holy Soul Village has not produced a soul master for more than 10 years. The same is true for other villages. I can go to other villages and lend you a place. Don't worry. Old Jack chuckled. So that's it. Lin Ye finally understood when he heard that he could go to other villages to borrow places. Xiaosan, Xiao is definitely willing to go to the Soul Master Academy. He has been particularly interested in martial arts and soul masters since he was a child, but what about you? Are you willing to go to the Soul Master Academy? As long as you are willing, I will go to other villages to teach you if you want a spot, don't worry, there won't be any problems. Old Jack looked at Tang San and said seriously. Well, Grandpa Jack, I need to ask my dad. Tang San looked a little hesitant, but still said. Hey! You really need to ask your father about this kind of thing. Hearing Tang San's answer, old Jack couldn't help but smiled bitterly and shook his head. Although Tang San always acted very sensible, he was still just a child after all. For such a big matter, adults should indeed be asked for their opinions. Let's go, I'll take you home and ask your father what he means. Grandpa, can I go first? I want to test my martial arts spirit. Hearing that Grandpa old Jack wanted to go to Tang San's house, Lin Ye couldn't help but say. Okay. Then you can leave first. Because Lin Ye had always shown interest in martial arts and soul masters, old Jack naturally agreed. In his opinion, Lin Ye had just awakened the martial spirit, so he must be very curious about the martial spirit, and it was normal for him to want to try the martial spirit's abilities. But in fact, Wuhan is just like that. Without becoming a soul master, Wuhan is actually nothing special. With old Jack's agreement, Lin Ye turned and left. However, after getting out of old Jack's sight, Lin Ye did not go home, but walked quickly towards the back mountain. Wow, Xiao Tong has signed the contract, and the contract is being mailed. Don't worry, everyone, I don't know how to be a eunuch. Chapter 7. After leaving Holy Soul Village, Lin Ye walked all the way towards the back mountain. Because it was past morning and the sun was high in the sky, the temperature was very hot under the fiery sunlight, so Lin Ye didn't meet anyone along the way. Came to the back mountain. Because the sun was too harsh, Lin Ye did not prepare to climb to the top of the mountain, but came to a big tree halfway up the mountain. There happened to be a large smooth stone under the shade of the tree in front of him, which Lin Ye could sit on. He sat on the big rock and looked around. After finding no one, Lin Ye stretched out his right hand. Brush! With a flash of white light, a white begonia flower appeared in Lin Ye's hand. On the white begonia flower, the beautiful stamens exuded a refreshing fragrance, while the white petals exuded a faint light. Generally speaking, as far as Lin Ye knew, most begonia flowers were pink. Of course, there are also some begonia flowers that are slightly different in color from ordinary begonia flowers due to the environment and their varieties. However, Lin Ye has never seen any begonia flowers that are as white and flawless as the ones on his hands. It exudes a sense of holiness. This shouldn't be an ordinary begonia flower, right? Looking at the begonia flower in his hand, Lin Ye frowned slightly and thought to himself. According to what Master Su Yun Tao said when he awakened in the martial spirit branch hall just now, whether it is a useless martial spirit depends on the ability of the martial spirit. Tang San's blue-silver grass has no ability and is known to be incompetent. The martial spirit is therefore considered to be a useless martial spirit. But my begonia flower spirit is obviously different from ordinary begonia flowers. Although it should have no attack power, it is impossible for a spirit with full soul power to be useless. But the question is how to trigger this begonia flower. What about the abilities of Wuhan? Martial spirit, soul power. Lin Ye suddenly thought, if the soul power was injected into the begonia flower martial spirit, would it be possible to stimulate the abilities of the begonia flower martial spirit? Since the key to a soul master is soul power, this proves that there must be a great connection between martial soul and soul power. In all likelihood, the performance of martial soul abilities depends on the drive of soul power. Just do it. Although Lin Ye's body does not have the soul power of a soul master in the conventional sense, Lin Ye has true energy. Since Zhu Yang's true energy can make the crystal ball used to test soul power shine before, this proves that Nine Yang's true energy can definitely be used as a weapon. The use of soul power is equivalent to a special soul power. Using the Nine Yang divine skill, Lin Ye injected the Nine Yang true qi in his body into the begonia flower martial soul in his hand. With the injection of Zhu Yang's true energy, the begonia flower martial spirit suddenly bloomed with a holy light. Regarding this holy light, Lin Ye was surprised to find that he could actually control this light. Really? Is this the ability of my begonia flower martial spirit? But where should this light be used? Lin Ye looked around for a while, and finally his eyes fell on the grass at his feet. Stretching out his right hand, his heart moved. Under Lin Ye's control, holy light suddenly bloomed from the begonia flower spirit and fell on the grass. Using the Nine Yang true qi to drive the begonia flower martial soul, Lin Ye could clearly feel that the Nine Yang true qi in his body was being consumed violently. If it continued, it would only be able to sustain it for more than a minute. In 1 minute, I don't know if I can test the martial soul's ability. But reality soon gave Lin Ye the answer. Under the illumination of the holy light, Lin Ye was surprised to find that a small patch of grass on the ground illuminated by the holy light began to grow wildly. The grass that was originally only close to a finger deep, unexpectedly grew in just 10 seconds. It rose to more than 2 fingers deep. Is this the ability of my martial spirit? It can stimulate the growth of plants. It seems that it may have something to do with vitality. Lin Ye couldn't help but be surprised when he saw the changes in the grass beneath his feet. By testing on the grass, Lin Ye roughly understood the capabilities of the begonia flower spirit, but testing on the grass alone was not enough. After all, what the grass could reflect was still too limited. After discovering that Wuhan's ability was harmless, Lin Ye decided to use it on himself. Holding the begonia flower martial spirit in his right hand, Lin Ye injected the remaining 9 Yang qi into the begonia flower martial spirit again. As the holy light bloomed again, this time, Lin Ye sprinkled the holy light on himself. Brush! As the holy light fell on his whole body, Lin Ye suddenly felt as if his whole body had been soaked in a hot spring, and a strange warm current poured into his body. Under the influence of this warm current, Lin Ye found that his Zhu Yang qi began to recover. The physical strength that had been consumed by climbing the mountain began to recover quickly, and his spirit became renewed again. Lin Ye was a little surprised. The light emitted by my begonia flower martial spirit is not only related to vitality, but can also restore true energy and spiritual power. Doesn't this have 3 functions? Under the influence of the begonia flower martial spirit, although Lin Ye consumed all the Zhu Yang qi in his body, under the holy light, the Zhu Yang qi gradually returned to its full state. He stopped injecting soul power into the begonia flower martial soul. Looking at the white begonia flowers in his hands, Lin Ye felt a little weird. Originally, the Zhu Yang divine art restored the true energy very quickly, but now that there is the begonia flower martial spirit, the light generated by consuming the true energy can help restore more 9 Yang true energy, so wouldn't my own true energy be used up? After continuing the experiment for a while, Lin Ye scratched himself. Under the holy light, the wound began to heal quickly. Through constant experiments and summaries, Lin Ye finally determined the abilities of the begonia flower martial spirit. The begonia flower martial soul can absorb soul power and release a kind of holy light. The holy light has the effect of restoring vitality, soul power, and spiritual power. The effect of restoring vitality is currently the most widely used. It can not only promote the growth of plants, but also restore injuries and restore physical strength. The effect is very powerful. With such a powerful ability, my begonia flower martial spirit is definitely not a useless martial spirit. Thinking of what Master Su Yun Tao said before, Lin Ye couldn't help but shook his head. It seemed that the master had made a mistake sometimes. After testing the ability of the begonia flower martial spirit, Lin Ye withdrew the begonia flower martial spirit, took a deep breath, and stretched out his right hand again with a solemn expression. When the martial spirit awakened just now, although Lin Ye only showed the begonia flower martial spirit, in fact, Lin Ye sensed 2 martial spirits in his body, oh no, 3 martial spirits. In addition to begonia flower, there is also a sword martial spirit and an unawakened martial spirit. This is not Lin Yi's illusion. Lin Ye can still sense the 3rd martial spirit hidden in his body. However, Lin Ye has a feeling that if he wants to forcibly summon this martial spirit, his body will definitely be unable to bear it. And injured. Although he could not summon the 3rd martial spirit hidden in his body now, in the strange state when the martial spirit awakened before, Lin Ye vaguely saw that the 3rd martial spirit was a very slender beast martial spirit. Lin Ye felt that its image looked a bit like the legendary dragon. The dragon has always been a legendary beast. If it is a martial spirit, it must be the most powerful beast martial spirit, so if it cannot be summoned now, it is normal. Because the 3rd martial spirit has not yet fully awakened, Lin Ye can only summon the 2nd martial spirit first to see what capabilities it has. He stretched out his right hand, and as Lin Yi's heart moved, a golden light flashed, and then a golden long sword suddenly appeared in Lin Yi's hand. This is a long sword nearly 3 feet long. It is golden in color. One side of the sword is engraved with the sun, moon, and stars, and the other side is engraved with mountains, rivers, and vegetation. The hilt is covered with all kinds of strange characters, as big as mosquitoes and flies. Densely packed. What kind of sword is this? It seems to give people an inexplicable sense of sanctity and majesty. Looking at the golden sword in his hand, his 2nd martial spirit, Lin Ye couldn't help but be shocked. Although he didn't recognize this long sword, the feeling of this golden long sword made Lin Ye subconsciously feel that this long sword was not simple, it must be a unique sword. And compared to summoning the begonia flower spirit before, Lin Ye obviously felt that it was more difficult to summon and maintain the existence of this long sword. Because in just a few seconds, this long sword actually consumed nearly 1/3 of Lin Yi's Zhiyang Qi. Chapter 8. Let me see how sharp you are. He raised the golden sword in his hand. Under the sunlight shining in the sky, the golden blade glowed with dazzling golden light. Looking at the various patterns engraved on the sword, Lin Ye couldn't help but whisper to himself. According to what Master Su Yun Tao said when the martial soul awakened before, the most important thing about a martial spirit is its attack power. The Haitanghua martial spirit has other abilities because it has no attack power. But since the golden sword in his hand is a sword spirit, the key must be its attack power, or sharpness. Because the golden sword consumed Zhiyang's true energy too violently, Lin Ye took the sword back into his body, then stood up from the boulder and prepared to go down the mountain. To test the sharpness of the sword, the dense woods at the foot of the mountain are definitely more convenient than the back mountain without many big trees, and going there is also more suitable for what Lin Ye wants to do next. After descending the back mountain, Lin Ye entered the dense forest not far below the mountain. At this moment, because the sun is very close to the sky, the temperature is even hotter. But in the forest, because there are towering trees everywhere, and the thick canopies of each big tree are stacked on top of each other, blocking the sunlight, so the forest is quite shady. After fully entering the dense forest, seeing no one around, Lin Ye stretched out his right hand again and summoned the golden sword spirit. Holding the golden sword in his hand, Lin Ye did not dare to delay due to the intense consumption of Zhiyang's true energy in his body. Adhering to the idea of experimentation, he waved the long sword in his hand directly towards a tree in front of him that was as thick as a human's arms. Cut it off. I saw a flash of golden light, and the sword instantly passed through the tree. Then with a click sound, the upper half of the big tree began to tilt and fell to the left. After the dense crown collided with a large number of big trees, it finally fell crashing into the forest. Boom! In an instant, dust was flying and fallen leaves were flying. Lin Ye was a little startled when he looked at the extremely smooth cross-section of the lower half of the big tree in front of him. What a sharp sword! Taking advantage of the fact that there was still some Zhuyang qi left in his body, Lin Ye retracted his thoughts and waved the golden sword in his hand again, chopping, slashing, stabbing. He kept swinging the long sword in his hand towards the big tree beside him. The golden long sword is extremely sharp. No matter how thick the tree is, it cannot stop the long sword at all. It can be cut, split, or pierced into the trunk of the tree instantly. There is no lag in the process, and the sharpness is incredible. In the end, Lin Ye even stabbed half of his sword directly into a piece of green rock on the ground. Although the long sword was not completely immersed, it was able to pierce into the Qinggang rock, which is enough to prove the sharpness of the long sword. The reason why it didn't penetrate all the way was probably because Lin Ye didn't have enough strength. Sure enough, it is a peerless divine sword. Legend has it that the peerless divine sword can blow short hair and cut iron like mud. Although I haven't experimented with gold and iron yet, it can easily penetrate Qinggang rock. If you have enough strength, you can cut through it. It shouldn't be a problem to break gold and iron. Due to the excessive consumption of Zhuyang's true energy, the golden sword automatically dissipated. Looking at the impact he had caused around him, Lin Yi's face was a little pale, but he couldn't help but smile. Whether it is the begonia flower martial spirit or the golden longsword martial spirit, their abilities are extraordinary and they are the top martial arts spirits. Coupled with the third martial soul that he has not yet awakened, he will definitely become the most powerful soul master in the future. After testing the begonia flower spirit and the golden longsword spirit, Lin Ye knew the general capabilities and power of the two spirits. Only the third spirit could not be tested because it was not fully awakened. But Lin Yi's physical fitness, which is now even higher than that of an adult, cannot bear it. The third martial spirit is definitely an extremely powerful martial spirit. And if what I saw before was correct, the third martial spirit is probably the legendary beast martial spirit dragon. Maybe even more powerful than the begonia flower spirit and the golden longsword spirit. After testing his martial spirit, Lin Ye did not leave. Instead, he found a smooth rock in the woods. After wiping it clean with an eye rock, he sat on it and began to sit cross-legged and practice the nine yang magic. Thanks to the powerful qi recovery ability of Zhuyang divine art, Lin Ye quickly recovered a lot of Zhuyang qi in his body. Then with the help of the begonia flower martial spirit's ability, Lin Ye restored the Zhuyang qi in his body to its full state in a short while. After doing everything, Lin Ye took off a jade pendant from his waist. This is a jade pendant that is roughly square in shape and is completely green. The jade pendant is surrounded by various strange patterns, and in the center, there are two large characters carved with dragons and phoenixes. Lin Ye. I awakened my martial spirit today, should I be able to break through that energy barrier, right? Stroking the jade pendant in his hand, feeling the warmth from the jade pendant, Lin Ye thought to himself, breathed out lightly, and began to inject the nine yang qi in his body into the jade pendant. With the injection of Zhuyang's true energy, a faint golden light began to glow on the surface of the jade pendant. However, after the nine yang true qi was injected into the jade pendant, it seemed as if it encountered an invisible barrier and was unable to advance even an inch. Lin Ye had foreseen this situation, so he calmed down and began to continuously mobilize the nine yang qi in his body to attack the energy barrier in the jade pendant. Boom! 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 Under Lin Yi's control, the surging Zhuyang qi continued to bombard the energy barrier in the jade pendant like a stormy sea, again and again. Under the impact of the nine yang true qi of the first heavenly perfection, the energy barrier finally began to be shaken and was on the verge of collapse. Boom! Finally, with a vague roar, the energy barrier in the jade pendant was broken, and Lin Yi's consciousness instantly seemed to enter a dark space. At the same time, a stream of information surged into Lin Yi's mind, making Lin Ye couldn't help but show a look of pain on his face. A large amount of memory was suddenly stuffed into my mind. The strong stinging and swelling feeling was not pleasant. However, after a long time, the pain gradually subsided, and Lin Ye slowly opened his eyes. Dragon Elephant Prujna Kung Fu, Phoenix Dance 6 Illusions, Douluo 9 Swords. After carefully sorting out the information that just poured into his mind, Lin Ye couldn't help but frown and mutter to himself after learning the content of this information. Because he had the experience of nine yang magic before him, Lin Ye naturally knew that this flow of information contained three kinds of martial arts. The names are called Dragon Elephant Prujna Kung Fu, Phoenix Dance 6 Illusions and Douluo 9 Swords. According to the information on the three martial arts, these three martial arts belong to body training martial arts, body martial arts and sword skills respectively. Etc. His swordsmanship seems to be just right for his awakened golden longsword spirit. This shouldn't be a coincidence. Thinking of the golden longsword martial spirit he had awakened, Lin Ye couldn't help but feel something in his heart. On the mainland, there are many types of weapons. In addition to swords, there are also knives, guns, spears, halberds, etc. The jade pendant left by his parents contains swordsmanship. This is definitely not a coincidence, but proves that his parents knew that he would awaken the sword spirit, so he left the swordsmanship to him. According to Lin Yi's knowledge, the martial spirit was inherited from his parents. So from this point of view, my begonia flower martial spirit, sword martial spirit and the hidden third martial spirit must have been inherited from my parents, so my parents knew about it and left the corresponding martial arts to me through the jade pendant. As far as we know so far, the begonia flower martial spirit and the golden long sword martial spirit are both top-notch martial arts. With these two martial spirits, the parents are definitely not ordinary soul masters. When you become a powerful soul master in the future, you might be able to use your martial soul to ask for news about other people's parents. Suddenly thinking of this, Lin Ye couldn't help but feel a little happy. Chapter 9. I got 3 martial arts skills from the jade pendant, and thought of a new way to get information about my parents. Lin Ye was very satisfied. Today's martial soul awakening is a great harvest for Lin Ye. The 9 Yang magic technique, which has no lethality, gave Lin Ye a physical fitness that far exceeded that of an adult. Now there are dragon elephant prujna skills specifically used to exercise the body, as well as body techniques that can be used for offense and sword techniques that are specifically used for attack. This can definitely greatly enhance Lin Yi's attack capabilities. According to legend, soul masters are extremely powerful. But Lin Ye felt that if he could master the dragon elephant prujna technique, Phoenix Dance 6 illusions and Douluo 9 swords, his strength would definitely not be inferior to that of a powerful soul master. And if he uses martial arts, maybe even a soul master won't be his opponent. However, after breaking the energy barrier in the jade pendant, in addition to these 3 martial arts, it seems that there is something else in the jade pendant. Looking at the jade pendant in his hand, Lin Ye suddenly thought of the dark space that his consciousness entered after breaking the energy barrier, and couldn't help but frown. After thinking about it, Lin Ye once again injected Zhuyang Qi into the jade pendant. For a moment, his eyes suddenly went dark, and Lin Yi's consciousness entered a dark space. This dark space is about the size of a small room, and a wooden box is floating quietly in the space. Really? Seeing the wooden box, Lin Ye couldn't help but have the idea that this was indeed the case. Is this wooden box also left to me by my parents? Thinking that the wooden box was probably left to him by his parents, Lin Ye couldn't help but want to get the wooden box. With the emergence of this idea, Lin Yi's consciousness suddenly left this space. As Lin Yi's consciousness returned again, Lin Ye was surprised to find that the wooden box appeared in his hand. Is this the legendary storage space? Thinking of the experience just now, Lin Ye couldn't help but suddenly remembered the story told by his grandfather Old Jack. The powerful soul master had a treasure that could store many items. There is a large space inside this treasure, which is called a storage space. I wonder what's in this wooden box. The thought of storing treasures just flashed through his mind. Although Lin Ye was full of curiosity about storing treasures in the past, now Lin Ye undoubtedly focused more on the wooden box. Because this wooden box was probably specially left for him by his parents. Hey! Looking at the wooden box in his hand, Lin Ye took a deep breath and opened the wooden box with anxiety. As the wooden box was opened, what was inside was immediately revealed. It was a letter. Dear son. Taking the letter out of the wooden box, Lin Ye saw this line of words as soon as he saw it, and his eyes couldn't help but turn red. This letter was indeed left to him by his parents. Dear son, when you read this letter, you should be 6 years old and have awakened your martial soul. And you have also worked hard to practice the 9 sun magic skills that your father left for you to the first level of perfection. Your mother and I are deeply gratified for your efforts. Because we are going to a potentially dangerous place, we cannot take you there. We can only leave you to be raised by others and cannot witness your childhood. Your mother and I deeply regret it, but life is so fickle. Since you got this letter, it proves that you should have obtained the 3 martial arts I left for you, Dragon Elephant Prujna Kung Fu, Phoenix Dance 6 illusions and Douluo 9 swords. These 3 Kung Fu techniques are all I carefully selected it for you. The Dragon Elephant Prujna skill will allow you to obtain better soul rings in the future, and the 6 Fantasy Phoenix Dance is an excellent movement technique. It is very suitable for traveling or fighting. Sometimes, fighting, but there is no shame in just running away. After all, everything is possible when you are alive. The Douluo 9 swordsmanship is an excellent swordsmanship. You need to practice diligently. If you can practice these 3 martial arts well, even if you are just getting started, and combined with your 9 yang divine art, you will become a soul master. You can fight, and if you use your Xianyuan sword martial soul, no ordinary soul master will be your opponent. However, the Xianyuan sword martial spirit consumes a lot of energy. If you want to use Xianyuan sword, it is best to use it together with the 9 spirits immortal Tang martial spirit, so that you can last longer. Zhuling Xian Tang, Xianyuan sword, these are the names of the martial arts you can use now. Xianyuan sword was passed on to you by me, and Zhuling Xian Tang is your mother's, but there is another martial arts I passed on to you. The soul is a very powerful beast martial soul. If you want to fully awaken it, you need to practice the Dragon Elephant Prujna Kung Fu as soon as possible. Now that you are 6 years old and your martial soul has awakened, you should also embark on the path of becoming a soul master and go to the Soul Master Academy to study. You have inherited the martial souls of me and your mother. You must be innately full of souls force. In the Junior Soul Master Academy, as long as you absorb soul rings and become a soul master, you can graduate. But before that, you need to learn about soul beasts and soul masters. Under the wooden box, there are 2 books. After reading these 2 books, you should be able to have a general understanding of the world of soul beasts and soul masters. It takes 6 years to study in the Junior Soul Master Academy, but I think you don't need to stay in the academy for so long. Because of the martial arts that your father and I left you, the Junior Soul Master Academy will not be of much use to you. In fact, after you finish studying some subjects that you think are important in the Junior Soul Master Academy, you can almost leave the Junior Soul Master Academy and travel to the mainland. At this time, you have become a soul master. You can try to break another layer of Jade Perry's restrictions. You will also get other things I left for you. These things are enough to protect your safety when you travel. My child, the edge of a sword comes from sharpening, and the fragrance of plum blossoms comes from the bitter cold. You can't become a strong person simply by studying in the Junior Soul Master Academy, and practicing Dragon Elephant Prujna Kung Fu requires a lot of money. If you stay in the Soul Master Academy all the time, it will be difficult for you to make progress, so I hope you can travel to the mainland in the future. See more people and things. If you want to make money quickly, you can go to places like the Soul Hunting Forest and join the soul hunting groups there. With the auxiliary ability of your 9 spirits immortal Tang martial soul, there are many soul hunting groups vying for you. But remember, unless you are forced into a desperate situation, don't show other martial arts easily. If someone sees your other martial arts, unless they are a trusted friend, they must not let it go. In addition, when absorbing soul rings, remember to add soul rings to Zhuling Xian Tang first. If you have not practiced Dragon Elephant Prujna to a certain extent, do not add soul rings to other martial souls. With Douluo 9 swords, your Xianyuan sword spirit is already powerful enough, so you don't need a spirit ring for the time being. This letter was left to you by Dad before he left. It is not a face-to-face communication, so you may not understand many words. This is not surprising. If you have other questions about soul beasts and soul masters, you can read more of the books I left for you. Remember, Mom and Dad love you. Dad, Mom. After reading the letter, Lin Ye put it down, his eyes turned red and his voice became choked with sobs. Sure enough, he knew that his parents had not abandoned him. Holding back his tears, Lin Ye wiped his red eyes, carefully folded the letter left by his parents and held it in his hand. Looking at the wooden box that was a foot high in his hand, Lin Ye opened a thin compartment, and sure enough there were 2 thick books underneath. One has the Encyclopedia of Soul Beasts written on the cover, and the other has Common Knowledge in the Soul Master World written on the cover. Putting the folded letter back into the wooden box, Lin Ye put the wooden box into Jade Perry, and then after briefly flipping through the 2 books, Encyclopedia of Soul Beasts and Common Sense of the Soul Master World, Lin Ye put these 2 books. The book was also included in Jade Perry. I looked up at the sky and saw that it was almost noon. After spending so long here, it's time to go back. The public chapter, non-hydrological, basically hints at the protagonist's future route. He will show off at Notting College, and then leave to travel the mainland. Chapter 10. After leaving the forest in the back mountain, Lin Ye returned to his home in Holy Soul Village. Because he stayed in the back mountain and the forest of the back mountain for a long time, when Lin Ye returned home, old Jack had already come back, just cursing a little, and he was obviously not very happy. "Grandpa, what's wrong?" When he got home and saw his grandfather Jack looking unhappy, Lin Ye couldn't help but ask. "Don't mention it. This Tang Hao is so selfish." Hearing Lin Yi's words, old Jack angrily knocked the cane on the ground and said angrily. "Going to the Soul Master Academy to study is an opportunity that many people dream of. For Xiao San, this is also a great opportunity to become a master. If you can become a soul master, you won't have to worry about the future. This Tang Hao actually won't let the mistress go because he wants the mistress to cook for him. And he even bit me back, saying that I was doing it for my own benefit, so that Holy Soul Village could produce a soul master, so I had to let the mistress go to the Soul Master Academy. It's a joke. Could it be that going to the Soul Master Academy would be harmful to mistress? What a short-sightedness! A short-sightedness! The more he thought about it, the angrier he became, and old Jack couldn't help but curse. "Grandpa, don't be angry." Seeing that old Jack was so angry, Lin Ye couldn't help but comfort him. "Uncle Tang Hao has always been like this, isn't it? It's nothing to make a fuss about, but I think Uncle Tang Hao said this because he couldn't accept it for a while. Tang San definitely still wants to go to the Soul Master Academy. There are still 3 months until the start of the Soul Master Academy. Uncle Tang Hao he should still figure it out." "Hey! I hope so." Old Jack shook his head. "No matter what Tang Hao thinks, I will still go to the next village tomorrow to ask them about their quota of work-study students this year. Let's say hello and prepare in advance." More than 10 days passed in a flash. During these 10 days, Lin Ye practiced the 3 exercises that his father left behind through the Jade Pendant, Dragon Elephant Prujna Technique, Phoenix Dance 6 Illusions, and Dugu 9 Swords, while reading the 2 books he got from the wooden box. Learn about soul beasts and the soul master world. Lin Yi's talent is very good. He mastered all 3 martial arts in less than 3 days. Until now, Lin Ye has achieved certain results in the practice of the 3 martial arts. In the early morning, the morning light is dim. Walking out of the wooden house as usual, and saying goodbye to his grandfather old Jack, Lin Ye came to the forest not far below the back mountain. Covered by trees and inaccessible, this place is a good place for practicing martial arts that Lin Ye found. Standing in an open space, Lin Ye squatted on horseback and assumed a strange posture. He pushed forward with his hands and clasped his feet tightly on the ground. His whole body was like a wooden stake nailed to the ground. He began to move in a strange way. Breathe in a rhythmic rhythm. One call. Take a breath. Over and over again. As he continued to breathe, Lin Yi's skin gradually became covered with a layer of red, and there was a faint mist steaming out through the pores of his skin. In the slightly shady forest, this mist is particularly eye-catching. In addition to the abnormality on his body, Lin Ye also made bursts of sounds in his body. This sound was like an elephant neighing, but the sound was much lower. It could even be said to be a little weak, but in the silence you can hear it clearly in the forest. This is Lin Yi's Dragon Elephant Prujna technique in the Dragon Elephant Prujna Kung Fu. Dragon Elephant Prujna technique is one of the methods of transporting qi and blood recorded in Dragon Elephant Prujna Gong. Combined with special breathing methods, it can exercise the body and increase strength. It is also the most basic method of Dragon Elephant Prujna Gong. Secret method. In addition to the Dragon Elephant Stake technique, Dragon Elephant Prujna Kung Fu also includes Dragon Elephant Body Refining Fist, Dragon Elephant Devouring Technique, Dragon Elephant Stinging Dragon Technique and other secret techniques, all of which are unique techniques used to temper the body and enhance strength. With so many magical secrets, Dragon Elephant Prujna Kung Fu is naturally no ordinary martial art. According to the information in Lin Yi's mind, the Dragon Elephant Prujna Kung Fu is divided into 13 levels. Each time you complete one level, you can gain tens of thousands of kilograms of strength. If you can achieve the 13th level, you can even obtain an indestructible golden body and be able to shatter the void. And go. In the past, when he practiced the 9 Yang divine art, although the 9 Yang true qi could continuously nourish the body, allowing Lin Ye to obtain physical fitness that was far beyond ordinary people, this physical quality still depended more on the blessing of the 9 Yang true qi. If he didn't use Zhuyang Zhenkai, Lin Yi's physical fitness would be almost that of an adult, and he could lift his arms with about 200 kilograms of strength. But after practicing the Dragon Elephant Prujna Kung Fu, Lin Yi's strength increased several times in just 10 days. Now even without the blessing of Zhuyang Zhenkai, Lin Yi's strength exceeds 500 kilograms, and if he is blessed with Zhuyang Zhenkai, it is no problem to lift up 1,000 kilograms of strength. After practicing the Dragon Elephant Prujna Kung Fu through the Dragon Elephant Stake technique in the woods for nearly half an hour, Lin Ye finally couldn't hold on any longer. Although the Dragon Elephant Pile method can indeed strengthen the body and increase strength, the process also requires a large amount of energy and blood. Lin Yi's current physical fitness can only last about half an hour. This is still Zhuyang Zhenkai. Speeds up body recovery. If he wanted to persist longer, Lin Ye would need to continuously consume more food rich in life essence or meat and convert it into qi and blood through the Dragon Elephant devouring method. After retracting the Dragon Elephant Stake technique, although he stood in the same posture for a long time, Lin Ye didn't feel stiff because the Dragon Elephant Stake technique transported qi and blood, so he just moved his body briefly in the forest, and Lin Ye started learn the next martial art. As the 9 yang qi circulated in his body, Lin Ye jumped up, and his body suddenly jumped up. As if he was weightless, he floated up and landed on the crown of a big tree. Then, like flying feathers, Lin Ye kept flying over the big trees. This was the second martial skill that Lin Ye practiced, the 6 illusions of Phoenix Dance. The 6 illusions of Phoenix Dance is a physical martial art that can make the user's body as light as a feather, flying over the treetops of big trees. After making the body light, the body can naturally explode. Unimaginable speed. At Lin Yi's current speed, he can easily cross more than 10 meters in 1 second, which is terrifying, and this is just the level at which Lin Ye has just entered the first level of the 6th level of Lian Feng Wu Lu Huan. After practicing the 6 illusions of Phoenix Dance, Lin Ye fell to the ground again, broke a branch, and started practicing sword skills in the forest again. Lin Ye was seen holding a branch in his hand as if he were holding a long sword. While his figure kept moving in the forest, he kept waving the branch in his hand, chopping, cutting, stabbing, picking, shaking. Various techniques were skillfully used in Lin Yi's hands. These are the basic skills recorded in Douluo 9 swords. Only after learning these basic skills can Lin Ye start to learn the 9 sword styles recorded in Douluo 9 swords. More than half an hour passed in the blink of an eye. Because Lin Ye devoted all his energy to practicing the sword, using almost all his strength in every move, by the time he was tired, Lin Ye was already covered in sweat and panting. That's it for today, it's time to go home. After practicing the Douluo 9 swords, Lin Ye dropped the branch in his hand, wiped the sweat from his forehead, walked out of the forest, and walked towards home. When I got home, Grandpa Jack had already prepared breakfast. After eating, old Jack left home and went to work in the fields. Originally, at this time, Lin Ye would usually be at home reading the 2 books his father left behind, Encyclopedia of Soul Beasts and Common Sense of the Soul Master World. But in more than 10 days, Lin Ye had finished reading these 2 books, and now what Lin Ye wanted to do was another thing. During this period of time, Lin Ye has been practicing martial arts, but among the 3 martial arts, Feng Wu Lu Huan and Douluo 9 swords Lin Ye practiced very smoothly, but Lin Ye encountered a bottleneck in the Dragon Elephant Prujna Kung Fu. Because as Lin Yi's body becomes stronger, practicing the Dragon Elephant Stake technique to increase his strength requires more energy and blood. However, even if Grandpa Old Jack is the village chief, his daily diet is just a simple meal, with a few fish at most, and really no meat. So Lin Ye could only find a way to solve this problem by himself. The solution Lin Ye thought of was to go hunting in the back mountains. With his current speed and strength, he could easily go deep into the back mountains to hunt. What Lin Ye lacked now was just a weapon, or a sword. With a sword handy, Lin Ye could easily go deep into the back mountain by using the 6 illusions of Phoenix Dance, and then find suitable prey. With Lin Ye possessing the 9 Yang Divine Art and the power gained from practicing Dragon Elephant Prujna Art, Lin Ye could easily hunt down even ferocious beasts like ligers and tigers. Lin Ye knew very well where he could get a handy sword, and that was from the Tang San family. Chapter 11. Tang San's is the only blacksmith shop in Holy Soul Village. Although Tang Hao's character was not very good, even Grandpa Jack had to admit it. Tang Hao's blacksmithing skills are very good, and the iron tools he creates are not only of high quality, but also extremely cheap. It is precisely because of this, and the fact that Tang San is very well behaved and sensible, that he is very popular with Old Jack, otherwise Old Jack would have expelled Tang Hao from the Holy Soul Village. However, although Tang Hao's level of forging iron tools is astonishing, he usually makes agricultural tools. Lin Ye had never heard of Tang Hao helping people make weapons, at most he could only make an axe. It is certainly much harder to make a long sword than to make an iron weapon such as an axe. But Lin Ye was definitely not willing to give up. After all, it was related to his practice. He also wants to gain strong strength as soon as possible so that he can travel to the mainland in the future. Although I have never heard of Tang Hao forging weapons, there are very few farm tools that can be made, and there should not be any big problem in making weapons such as long swords. If that didn't work, Lin Ye planned to roughly draw the appearance of Xianyuan sword spirit and let Tang Hao build it according to the pattern. We have all the drawings to compare with, but if we still can't build it, there's something wrong. And if this is the case, in the future, I will practice the Douluo 9 swords with this long sword that imitates the Xianyuan sword Wuhun. When necessary, it would be easier to use the Xianyuan sword spirit instead of the long sword to use the Douluo 9 swords. I found a few pieces of blank paper from the room that I had left behind when I was studying in a private school in the village. Lin Ye chose one, and while summoning the Xianyuan sword spirit, he used charcoal to draw the general appearance of the Xianyuan sword spirit on the white paper. Then Tang Hao can cast it according to the pattern. After doing everything, he folded the white paper and put it in his pocket. However, Lin Ye did not go to Tang San's house immediately, but planned to go to another place first. Growing up, Grandpa Jack, as the village chief of Holy Soul Village, was responsible for many matters in the village. So people often come to give things to Grandpa Jack, like pheasants, rabbits, or big fish. Let Grandpa Old Jack help with some things. For Old Jack, in fact, as long as the villagers in the village ask for help, he will usually try his best to help. But the villagers would still send things over, making Grandpa Jack more diligent in asking for help from the villagers. Regarding this kind of thing, Grandpa Jack said it is called human nature. If you want to ask someone to help you do something, even if the other person is a very enthusiastic person, if you want to make things go smoothly, you still have to give a gift. Even if the gift is not very valuable, it can still make others pay more attention to the matter. That's what Lin Ye wants to do. Because he was unsure about Tang Hao's ability to build weapons, in order to make Tang Hao pay more attention to this matter, Lin Ye also decided to give him gifts. Tang Hao liked drinking the most, so Lin Ye naturally liked him, so that things would get twice the result with half the effort. Anyway, the price of ale sold in the village is not too expensive, just a few copper soul coins. Lin Ye could still get this little money with his years of savings. He dug out a small wooden box from under the bed and opened it. Inside was some toys from Lin Ye's childhood, as well as a tips bag. Opening the brocade bag, there were more than 20 copper soul coins lying neatly inside, which were Lin Ye's lucky money for many years. Lin Ye took out 5 copper soul coins from more than 20 coins and put them away. Pushing the small wooden box under the bed again, he ran directly to the wine shop in the village. The wine shop of Holy Soul Village is located to the east of Holy Soul Village. It is a small wooden house. In the wooden house, there is a counter right at the entrance. Behind the counter, there are various kinds of wine on a sturdy shelf. But there are actually not many types, just 3 types: rice wine, fruit wine, and ale wine. Outside the wooden house, there are many wooden barrels. On the wooden roof, there is also a wooden barrel-shaped plaque, which is the logo of the wine shop. Lin Ye came all the way to the wine shop. Seeing Lin Ye, the owner of the wine shop, a middle-aged man with a beer belly and Mediterranean hair, couldn't help but smile and said, "Xiao Lin Ye, why do you have time to come to my place? I'm here to buy some wine. Uncle Max, please get me a small barrel of ale." Lin Ye didn't say much, just took out 5 copper soul coins, put them on the counter, and said, Xiao Lin Yi, you can't drink secretly at such a young age." Max did not take the copper soul coin immediately, but exclaimed in surprise and advised, "Uncle Max, I don't want to drink, I drink to give gifts." Lin Ye shook his head and didn't hide anything. Giving a gift? To whom? Could it be that drunkard Tang Hao? Hearing Lin Yi's words, Max couldn't help laughing. "Well, I want Uncle Tang Hao to help me build something." In response to Max's joke, Lin Ye nodded and responded calmly. "What do you want to build? You also want to give Tang Hao wine?" "This is not necessary." Although Tang Hao is a bit addicted to alcohol, he is still very careful when asking him to build things. The quality of the things he builds is generally not bad. It is not necessary. The one who delivers the wine. Hearing Lin Yi's admission, Max felt a little strange. "It doesn't matter. I want Uncle Tang Hao to make things better. There is nothing wrong with giving gifts." Lin Ye shook his head. "Okay. You little guy is really like a little adult. Since you insist, Uncle Max won't say anything." Realizing that Lin Ye still wanted to persist, Max shook his head with regret. He took Lin Ye's 5 copper soul coins and took a small barrel of ale from the shelf behind him and handed it to Lin Ye. Here, Xiao Lin Yi, your wine. Thanks Uncle Max. Lin Ye thanked him, then turned and left the wine shop, heading towards the blacksmith shop located to the west of Saint Soul Village. Holy Soul Village is not big. After leaving the wine shop, Lin Ye arrived near the blacksmith shop without walking for long. As long as you walk up a flight of stairs, you can arrive in front of Tang San's house. Walking on the stairs, Lin Ye held a small wooden barrel filled with ale. Before he arrived in front of the blacksmith shop, Lin Ye had already heard the sounds of clang and clang coming from the blacksmith shop. Tang Hao should be blacksmithing now. Tang San. Arriving in front of the blacksmith shop, Lin Ye shouted and walked towards the blacksmith shop. When Lin Ye walked into the blacksmith shop, Lin Ye found something unexpected. The person working in the blacksmith shop was not Tang Hao, but Tang San, which surprised Lin Ye. In the blacksmith shop, the forging hammer used for blacksmithing is extremely heavy, weighing at least 300 to 400 pounds. It is not something that ordinary children can pick up and wield like an arm. Lin Ye, why are you here? When Lin Ye was surprised and heard Lin Ye's shout, Tang San turned around and saw Lin Ye entering the blacksmith shop. He couldn't help but wipe the sweat on his forehead with his sleeves and smiled at Lin Ye. I want Uncle Tang Hao to help build something. This is a small gesture. Please accept it. Chapter 12. With that said, Lin Ye politely handed over the small barrel of ale he was holding. But seeing Lin Ye's actions, Tang San quickly declined, No. No. That's too polite. You and Grandpa Jack have helped us so much. We have always deserved it. Now that we can help you, it's too late for us to be happy. I don't need anything else from you. Don't worry. Whatever you want to build, my father, I will definitely help you build it with all your strength. But compared to Tang San, Tang Hao was very rude. Seeing the wine in Lin Ye's hand, Tang Hao stepped forward to take the ale, put the small barrel on the table, and asked, What do you want to create? Dad. On the side, seeing Tang Hao's movements, Tang San felt that his entire face was filled with shame. But Tang Hao's character was like this, and Tang San could only sigh helplessly. I want to make a sword. If possible, Uncle Tang Hao, you can make it according to the drawing on this drawing. While talking, Lin Ye took out a folded white paper, opened it, and handed it to Tang Hao. What is painted on it is the general appearance of Xian Yuan's sword. I see. After taking the drawing, Tang Hao glanced at it and looked at Lin Ye. His eyes were full of thoughts, but he still nodded. I can make your sword, but I have to teach Ziosan blacksmithing in the morning, and I can't help you make it until the afternoon. You can pick up the sword tomorrow. Tang Hao casually put the drawing on the table and pressed a corner with the barrel of ale, and said. Okay, but can I stay here and watch you guys forge? Lin Ye nodded, looked at Tang San who was forging iron, and then asked. After practicing Dragon Elephant Pruchna Kung Fu, Lin Ye's strength improved a lot. Seeing that Tang San was able to forge iron, Lin Ye suddenly wanted to try it too. But if you want to try it, you can't be so direct. Before trying it, you must observe it first. Casual. Tang Hao was a little strange about Lin Ye's request, but he was still very indifferent. It's just teaching his son to blacksmith. There is no hidden secret in it, so Tang Hao will not refuse others to watch. Although in the process of teaching his son how to blacksmith, he will reveal a lot of blacksmithing skills. But these techniques are actually just techniques and do not involve anything deeper. Even if others learn it, what they can obtain is limited. After all, there is not much use for hammer-type martial arts without matching skills. Thank you, Uncle Tang Hao. Lin Ye thanked him politely, then walked to the side where he could see the blacksmith, and began to watch. Tang Hao nodded noncommittally and continued to urge Tang San to strike. Don't think about anything else, concentrate, keep hammering, and beat this piece of iron until it's the size of your fist. Looking at Tang San who was still a little distracted, Tang Hao pointed at the iron block in front of Tang San that had been burned red by the flames and was about the size of a human head, and said in a deep voice. Yes, Dad, I know. After hearing Tang Hao's words, Tang San took a deep breath and calmed down. Holding the forging hammer next to him again, Tang San exploded with all his strength, raised it high, then swung it down hard, hitting the iron block again and again. Suddenly, a dull sound of dang and dang continued to be heard. But it is too difficult to hammer and forge an iron block the size of a human head into the size of a fist. Most blacksmiths probably wouldn't be able to do it in a short time, let alone Tang San. Although Tang San kept raising the forging hammer high, and then swung it down hard, hitting the iron block again and again. But despite all his efforts, he could only make dents of varying depths on the iron block. It looks like a small meteorite with craters, but the size of the iron block has not changed much. You should take a rest first. If you keep beating like this, I'm afraid even if you beat for 3 months, you won't be able to beat this piece of iron to the size of a fist. In the process of hammering the iron block with all his strength, Tang San was sweating profusely and panting without realizing it. However, after working hard for so long, he still couldn't achieve much results. On the side, Tang Hao couldn't help but frown and shook his head. He shook his head and said, "I'll show you how to strike iron." After saying that, Tang Hao stepped forward and pulled Tang San down, holding the forging hammer himself, demonstrating in a deep voice. Forging iron is not simply about holding the forging hammer with your hand and swinging it up and down. This method is the most stupid way. Not only is it easy to get tired, but the power it can exert is also the lowest. The correct way to forge iron is not to just use the strength of the arms, but to use the strength of the whole body, starting from the 2 calves, to the waist and abdomen, then to the back, and finally to the arms, allowing the strength to penetrate the whole body and inject the forged iron hammer, so that the forged iron hammer can be thrown out in a round shape. In this way, the maximum effect can be achieved by continuously hitting the iron block, instead of just mechanically holding the forging hammer with your hand, lifting the forging hammer and swinging it down. While explaining, Tang Hao held the forging hammer and started practicing. Tang Hao was seen standing up straight, his feet firmly clasped on the ground as if rooted to the ground, and then with a burst of deep drink, his body suddenly straightened up. Power seemed to suddenly burst out from the legs, flowing towards the body, from the waist and abdomen, to the back, and finally to the arms. With a loud shout, Tang Hao swung the forging hammer high from the ground, drew a circle in the air, swung it down hard, and slammed the forging hammer onto the iron block. Clang! With a deafening roar, Tang Hao's blow actually made a cylindrical depression a foot deep in the iron block the size of a human head. This is half a forged iron hammer that was smashed and completely embedded in it. Seeing what happened in front of them, Lin Yat and Tang San couldn't help but feel shocked. He actually smashed half of the forging hammer into the red-hot iron block. Such a fierce blow was something that even Lin Ye couldn't do at the moment. Perhaps Lin Ye could use the Xianyuan sword spirit to penetrate the iron block so deeply, but to smash such a heavy forged iron hammer with a flat hammer surface so deeply requires not only strong strength, but also extremely skilled skills. Now you try it. After continuing to swing the forging hammer a few times and demonstrating it several times, Tang Hao put the forging hammer down, took a step back, and said to Tang San, "Good." Walking to the red-hot iron block again, Tang San took a deep breath and closed his eyes. In his mind, he began to recall the techniques his father Tang Hao had just said, and moved his body. At the same time, he reached out and held the forging hammer. The power flows from the legs, to the waist and abdomen, to the back, and finally through the arms, poured into the forging hammer. Tang San thought silently in his mind, as if his body was floating in the water, his legs tightened, and his figure slowly lifted up. Power began to flow through his legs, through his waist and abdomen, to his back, and finally poured into the forging hammer through his arms. Drink! As all the strength in his body entered the forging hammer, Tang San suddenly opened his eyes and shouted loudly. Then, he instantly raised the forging hammer in his hand high, and then slammed it down on the red-hot iron in front of him. Clang! Compared to the other times, this time, Tang San actually made a dent the size of a bowl in the iron block. This shocked Tang San mentally, and he continued to swing the forging hammer. Clang! 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 The crisp sound of gold and iron clashing constantly echoed throughout the blacksmith shop. Under Tang San's constant hammer blows, depressions the size of the mouth of a bowl began to appear on the red-hot iron block. As the hammering continued, the size of the iron block began to gradually become smaller. But in the end, Tang San still wasn't able to fully master the techniques taught by Tang Hao. As he kept swinging the hammer, Tang San's correct posture for exerting force was actually only half of it. As time went by, Tang San couldn't help but couldn't hold on any longer. Stop! Seeing that Tang San was sweating profusely and even the hand holding the forging hammer was shaking, Tang Hao couldn't help but frown and shouted. After hearing Tang Hao's words, Tang San stopped, put the forging hammer on the ground, and wiped the sweat on his forehead with his sleeves. Go and take a rest, drink some water, and then continue after the rest is over. Looking at Tang San, Tang Hao frowned and said. On the side, seeing Tang San put down the forging hammer, Lin Ye couldn't help but his eyes moved slightly, and he suddenly took a step forward and asked, Uncle Tang Hao, can I try? Chapter 13. You want to try? In the blacksmith shop, Tang Hao was holding up a bowl of water, ready to drink it. Hearing Lin Yi's words, he couldn't help but cast a surprised look. On the side, Tang San also looked at Lin Ye with surprise. Blacksmithing is not a simple matter like hoeing or mowing grass. Even without mentioning blacksmithing skills, a forging hammer alone weighs 300 to 400 kilograms, and most adults cannot lift it. And a child, unless he is born with supernatural power, cannot lift a forging hammer at all. And only by lifting the forging hammer can you try to forge iron. If you can't lift the forging hammer, the blacksmithing will be aborted. Did you see Xiao San forging and wanted to try it? But blacksmithing is not that simple. Xiao San was able to learn blacksmithing at this age because of his natural strength and ability to lift a forging hammer. But there are not so many people in this world who are born with supernatural powers. Even if you understand the skills I just talked about, if you don't have enough strength, you can't even lift a forging hammer. How can you learn to forge? Looking at Lin Ye, Tang Hao frowned. Yes. Yes. Lin Ye, don't be impulsive. Dad will help you build your things. Blacksmithing is a strenuous job. Don't mess around, or you may hurt your body. On the side, Tang San also nodded and advised. As someone of the same age as Lin Ye, Tang San knew very well the strength of his age group and the weight of the forging hammer. I possess Xiantian Gong, and I have not practiced it since I was a child. My body is nourished by the internal power of Xiantian Gong, and I exercise regularly, but I can only barely reach the level of an adult. But even if he didn't use the inner strength of Xiantian Gong, and only used his own strength, he wouldn't be able to lift the forging hammer at all. According to Tang San's understanding of Lin Ye exercised as often as he did, and his physical fitness should be far better than that of his peers. But without the nourishment of Xiantian Gong's inner strength, he would be much worse than himself. With his own strength, he could not lift the forging hammer without the support of internal strength. It was even more impossible for Lin Ye to lift the forging hammer. Unless Lin Ye, like himself, possesses the same martial arts as Xiantian Gong. But according to what Tang San knew, there seemed to be no concept of martial arts in this world. It should be impossible for Lin Ye to practice martial arts, so Lin Ye would definitely not be able to lift the forging hammer. Lin Ye naturally didn't know what Tang San was thinking. However, just as Lin Ye didn't know that Tang San practiced a technique called Xiantian Gong, Tang San also didn't know that Lin Ye actually practiced a skill called Nine Yang Divine Skill. In addition to the Nine Sun Magic Kung Fu, Lin Ye also practiced the Dragon Elephant Prujna Kung Fu, which is specialized in body training. Even if he only had the Nine Yang Divine Skill, Lin Ye could easily lift the forging hammer, and after practicing the Dragon Elephant Prujna skill, Lin Ye could lift it even more easily. In the blacksmith shop. After hearing Tang Hao and Tang San's advice, Lin Ye knew that they had good intentions. But his strength is much stronger than the two of them imagined. Therefore, Lin Ye couldn't help but smile lightly and said, Uncle Tang Hao, why do you only think that Tang San has innate divine power, but maybe I also have innate divine power? Are you also born with divine power? Hearing Lin Yi's words, Tang Hao and Tang San couldn't help but froze. Obviously, he was a little surprised by Lin Yi's words. How can there be so much natural power in this world? After a moment, Tang Hao couldn't help but laugh. He is the blacksmith of the Holy Soul Village, but in addition to this identity, he actually has another identity, that is, Haoshan Douluo of the Haoshan sect, one of the 3 sects on the Douluo continent. Even in the history of their Haoshan sect, among the countless children who possess the top-notch martial spirit Haoshan hammer, there are only a few who are born with divine power. In this small Holy Soul Village, is it possible that 2 innate powers can be produced at once? For his own children, they have unparalleled twin martial spirits, coupled with their extraordinary bloodline. Although Tang Hao was surprised to be able to possess natural divine power, it was somewhat unexpected and reasonable. But Lin Ye was just an ordinary kid from the Holy Soul Village, and his martial spirit was not a powerful beast martial spirit. Even if you exercise diligently, innate divine power cannot be obtained through exercise. But just when Tang Hao was laughing in his heart, Lin Ye walked up in front of Tang San, and Tang Hao walked directly to the forging hammer, and grabbed the forging hammer. Then, in the shocked eyes of Tang San and Tang Hao, Lin Ye effortlessly lifted the forged iron hammer weighing 300 to 400 kilograms. He only used one arm and didn't use his whole body's strength, just took it lightly. Seeing the forging hammer being picked up easily in Lin Ye's hand, Tang Hao and Tang San couldn't help being stunned at the same time. How can it be? Although it's a bit heavy, it's not heavy. Holding the forging hammer in his hand, Lin Ye tried to swing it, bringing out strong winds in the air. On the side, Tang Hao and Tang San were even more shocked. This is really a natural divine power. Looking at Lin Ye's movements, Tang Hao muttered to himself blankly. Tang San, on the other hand, moved his lips, his heart extremely complicated. Even if he wanted to pick up this forged hammer easily, he still had to swing it down immediately after picking it up. Otherwise, if he continues to hold the forging hammer, he won't be able to hold on for long. But Lin Ye easily picked up the forging hammer and waved it casually in the air, with no intention of landing. His face looked normal, not red or out of breath. This made Tang San doubt his life. Is there really a person in this world who is born with supernatural powers, like Xiang Yu, the overlord of Chu? As a disguised innate divine power, Tang San couldn't help but have some self-doubt. After swinging the forging hammer and finding that it was quite smooth, Lin Ye couldn't help but look in the direction of Tang Hao and Tang San and said, "Uncle Tang Hao, Tang San, can I use the forging hammer to try to hit this piece of iron?" "Can." Tang Hao was extremely shocked, but he still put on a calm expression on his face and answered. He couldn't act too shocked, wouldn't that prove that Haoshan Douluo was making too much of a fuss? Tang San, on the other hand, still hadn't come back to his senses, so he just nodded blankly, yes. With the consent of Tang Hao and Tang San, Lin Ye held the forging hammer in his hand and put his eyes on the red-hot iron block in front of him, his eyes gradually becoming serious. In his mind, the scene of Tang Hao teaching blacksmithing skills flashed quickly in his mind. Lin Ye began to press his feet firmly on the ground as if he were squatting on a horse. Because of his experience with the dragon elephant stake technique, Lin Ye's squatting horse stance was even more standard than Tang San's. Drink. Because of the habit of the dragon elephant stake technique, Lin Ye began to adjust his breathing. After his body calmed down, Lin Ye suddenly let out a low cry and stood up straight. His body suddenly straightened up and his taut thighs exerted force. A force suddenly burst out from his legs, to his waist and abdomen, to his back, through his arms, and finally poured into the forging hammer in his hand. As the power penetrated his whole body, Lin Ye couldn't help but feel an extremely powerful force bursting out of his hand. Following this force, Lin Ye swung the forging hammer high in his hand, and then as if throwing the forging hammer out, he slammed it onto the iron block in front of him. Clang! In an instant, a deafening sound of gold and iron clashing echoed through the entire blacksmith shop. This is... Noticing Lin Ye's movements, Tang Hao couldn't help but stood up immediately, his face full of shock. How is it possible? How can this action be so standard? He only demonstrated it a few times just now. And unlike teaching Tang San, Lin Ye just watched and actually almost completely understood the techniques he demonstrated. Is this a monster? Lin Ye didn't see Tang Hao's shocked look. At this moment, all his attention was focused on the forging hammer in his hand and the iron block in front of him. In Tang Hao's shocked eyes, Lin Ye continued to swing the forging hammer. Amidst bursts of shrill whistling sounds, the forging hammer continued to hit the iron block. With the repeated blows, Lin Ye's movements became more and more standard. The key to Professor Tang Hao's technique actually lies in 2 points. One is to explode the power and penetrate the power throughout the body. The other is to throw the power out instead of simply lifting and swinging it down. Although Tang San understood the techniques before, he only knew how to burst out power and penetrate the whole body with power. But regarding the second point, throwing the power away, Tang San hadn't done it yet, but Lin Ye had done it. Moreover, after learning to throw away the power, Lin Ye was surprised to find out. Every time the forging hammer was hit on the iron block, the counter-shock force from the iron block was completely consistent with the direction of the throw. With this force, if the forging hammer is only rounded every time, swing it down again. This force will offset your own strength, causing your strength to be consumed even more intensely. Can you think of a way to retain this power? Lin Ye couldn't help but think. If this force can be retained, this force will be continuously superimposed upon hitting it again and again. This will definitely make it easier to strike iron. Clang! 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 With this idea in mind, Linya began to explore ways to retain this counter-shock force during the subsequent hits. Finally, through constant attempts, Linya discovered that as long as you can follow the direction of the counter-shock force, you can keep swinging the forging hammer left and right in the air. Then use the throw method to exert this force, so that the force can be superimposed again and again. Sure enough, is dumping the key. Linya couldn't help but think. Using this method, Linya kept raising the arm holding the forging hammer high and swung the forging hammer left and right, swinging the forging hammer vigorously. It was swung continuously, and the power continued to accumulate. In the end, the entire forging hammer was swung, and only after images could be seen, and bursts of shrill whistling wind could be heard. On the side, Tang Hao couldn't help being stunned when he saw Lin Yi's actions. No way! Is this kid really a monster? You actually understood the random cloak hammering technique through the techniques I taught you? Chapter 14. Clang! 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 In the blacksmith shop, the sound of hammers pounding continuously echoed throughout the house. After understanding the skills of the random cloak hammer method, Linya became more proficient in the use of the forging hammer, and the power he exerted became more powerful. I saw Linya holding the forging hammer and waving it left and right. The forging hammer was waved in the air violently, and only vague after-images could be seen, and bursts of shrill whistling sounds could be heard. This is very close to the Haoshan Sect's random cloak hammering method, at least in principle. Every time the forging hammer hits the red-hot iron block, while the red-hot iron block is dented, it will bounce high due to the repulsive force from the iron plate below, and then fall back down again. After repeated smashing, the red-hot iron block, which was originally the size of a human head, had been hammered by Linya to the size of a coconut. Seeing Linya fully comprehending the techniques he taught, he finally introduced new ones. He has developed application techniques that are close to the random cloak hammer method, and he is becoming more and more proficient in using them. Tang Hao couldn't help but remain silent about Lin Yi's terrifying learning and understanding abilities. There was no longer any expression on his face, he was close to numbness. On the side, Tang San was also silent, equally beaten by Lin Yi. But because he didn't think he was a genius in blacksmithing, Tang San wasn't too frustrated with Lin Yi's talent for blacksmithing. After all, he felt that his real talent lay in concealed weapons. But looking at the strength and evil talent Lin Yi is showing now. Thinking that he had just concluded that Lin Yi couldn't do it just because he couldn't do it, and therefore kept trying to dissuade Lin Yi, Tang San felt ashamed inside. Hey! You are the real innate power. Tang San couldn't help but shook his head in his heart, sighing secretly. Under the gazes of Tang Hao and Tang San, he waved the forging hammer for a long time. Finally, Lin Yi's physical strength could no longer support him. Although he practiced the two martial arts of Nine Yang Divine Skill and Dragon Elephant Prajna Skill, Lin Yi's strength and durability were greatly increased. But that would be enough if you simply swing a forging hammer. However, after figuring out the random cloak hammering technique, it takes a lot of physical strength and energy to use this technique skillfully. Therefore, after only 10 minutes, Lin Yi couldn't hold on any longer. However, if it were Tang San, the persistence time would definitely be shorter. Hey! After noticing that he was exhausted, Lin Yi began to gradually weaken his strength in wielding the forging hammer. Finally, he released the random cloak hammering technique, put the forging hammer back on the ground, and let out a sigh of relief. The weight of this forging hammer is not that heavy. It's just right. It's easy to swing, but it's not good enough for exercise. Lin Yi let go of the hand holding the forging hammer and looked at the forging hammer in front of him. Lin Yi wiped the sweat from his forehead and muttered to himself. Tang Hao! Tang San! Is this forging hammer very handy? Looking at the forging hammer that was close to his own height, he thought that he had tried his best to lift the forging hammer in the past few days. Tang San opened and closed his lips a few times, but for a moment he didn't know what to say. Sure enough, is he a fake with natural divine power? After hearing Lin Yi's words, Tang Hao's face turned a little dark. Isn't this forging hammer heavy? Is it just right? Are all children these days so scary? Innate divine power is standard, but each one is more terrifying than the other? Am I getting old, or have times changed? On the other side, after releasing the forging hammer and finishing talking to himself, Lin Yi couldn't help but turn to look at Tang Hao and Tang San. Uncle Tang Hao, how's my blacksmithing going? Very nice. Tang Hao was silent for a while and said. Thinking of all the doubts he had about Lin Ye just now, thinking that Lin Ye was not as good as his son, and now being slapped in the face, Tang Hao felt very complicated. Hearing Tang Hao's words, Lin Ye couldn't help but smile slightly. Uncle Tang Hao, I'll leave it to you to make the sword. I'll come over tomorrow to pick up the sword. I'll go back today. Goodbye, Uncle Tang Hao and Tang San. After saying that, Lin Ye turned around and left the blacksmith shop. Looking at Lin Ye's leaving figure, thinking of the strength and talent Lin Ye had shown just now, Tang Hao and Tang San couldn't help but have complicated expressions in their eyes, and sighed in their hearts. What a monster! The next day, early morning. Originally, according to the agreement with Tang Hao, Lin Ye could not get the sword until the next day. But I wonder if it was because Lin Ye's previous display of strength and talent shocked Tang Hao. Unexpectedly, in the evening of that day, Tang Hao forged the long sword Lin Ye needed and asked Tang San to send it over. So the next day, after practicing, Lin Ye carried the long sword on his back and activated the 6th fantasy of Phoenix Dance, flying quickly over the forest on the back hill of Saint Soul village and heading towards the depths of the forest. In the Douluo continent, although there are powerful creatures with special theories such as soul beasts, there are still ordinary beasts in the Douluo continent. As for soul beasts, they actually only exist in primitive forests like the Stardo forest and the soul-hunting forests kept captive by major empires. As for the forest behind the Holy Soul village, although it is also very vast, it is just an ordinary forest and there are no soul beasts. However, although the upper limit of the growth of soul beasts is high, the combat power of some ordinary beasts, such as lions, tigers, leopards, and bears, is actually not much different from some soul beasts that have been cultivated for no more than 10 years and whose races are not very powerful. Carrying a long sword on his back, Lin Ye circulated the 9 yang qi in his body and performed the 6 illusions of Phoenix Dance. The whole person seemed to be weightless, flying quickly over the boundless forest at an extremely fast speed. In less than half an hour, they had penetrated dozens of miles into the forest. At the edge of the forest on the mountain behind Holy Soul village, there are only some small animals, such as rabbits, mountain rats, and squirrels. But when Lin Ye went deep into the forest, some large beasts gradually appeared in Lin Ye's field of vision, including elk, roe deer, goats, lions, tigers, leopards, bears, wild boars, etc. Because it was his first time hunting, Lin Ye was very careful and did not rashly attack some powerful carnivorous beasts, or some ferocious omnivorous beasts. Now is not the time. After performing the 6 illusions of Phoenix Dance and scanning the surroundings over the forest, Lin Ye finally selected the target for his first hunting, a silly roe deer. Decided. It's you, silly roe deer. The long sword was unsheathed on his back. Lin Ye held the long sword in his hand and instantly swooped down to attack a wild roe deer. Obviously, this roe deer could not escape Lin Ye's grasp. Chapter 15. More than a month passed in a flash. For more than a month, Lin Ye's life was basically the same every day. In the morning, practice Dragon Elephant Prujna Kung Fu, Phoenix Dance 6 illusions and Dugu 9 swords at the edge of the forest. Then he performed the 6 illusions of Phoenix Dance and went hunting deep in the forest in the back mountain. In the evening, he summarized the day's gains. Since he went hunting deep in the forest of the back mountain and had enough meat to supplement his diet, Lin Ye's practice of Dragon Elephant Prujna Kung Fu has once again improved by leaps and bounds. Now even without the blessing of Zhuyang Zhenkai, Lin Ye's physical strength has reached the level of lifting 1,000 pounds with one arm. Now, the progress of the first level of Lin Ye's Dragon Elephant Prujna Kung Fu has just reached 1/10. When the first level is completed, it will not be a problem to have a single arm of 10,000 kilograms of strength. After Lin Ye started hunting, in addition to getting enough meat, the furs of some hunted beasts also brought a certain amount of income to the family. And the income is quite high, at least compared to the income of most villagers in Holy Soul village. According to Old Jack's intention, he will not hide these incomes privately. Instead, it will be handed over to Lin Ye in 3 months as Lin Ye's living expenses at the Junior Soul Master Academy. This day. In the morning, the sky was blue and clear, the sun had just risen, and the fiery red morning glow still lingered in the eastern sky. At this moment, deep in the forest, in a dense forest. The vast dense forest spreads endlessly, towering trees rise from the ground, and the dense canopies overlap and create mottled reflections on the ground. In a forest full of dense trees, Lin Ye was stepping on fallen leaves, holding a sharp sword, and was facing off against a ferocious beast with a solemn gaze. This is a wild boar that is nearly 3 meters long and looks like a behemoth. The muscles all over his body are tangled and look extremely strong. The thick hard skin is covered with a layer of mud that has dried hard, as if he is wearing a layer of armor. In the armor, there are dark hairs like steel needles standing upside down. Stand up. Although this wild boar does not have a mouth full of tusks, the 2 curved tusks protruding from the corners of its mouth match its huge body, full of muscles, and ferocious eyes. This wild boar is no less threatening to humans than some ferocious beasts such as lions, tigers, and bears. Humph! Humph! Staring at Lin Ye with ferocious eyes, the wild boar let out a low growl in its throat and kept hitting the ground with its front hooves, as if it was warming up and on guard. But Lin Ye didn't move, and the wild boar also didn't dare to attack rashly. Because it had been more than a month since he started hunting, Lin Ye's prey had gradually risen from some herbivorous beasts to the level of carnivorous beasts. Even beasts like lions, tigers, leopards, and bears would not let go if they were encountered by Lin Ye if they were sure. Therefore, Lin Ye has already developed an evil spirit in his body, which was generated by killing countless ferocious beasts. This evil spirit may have an impact on people, but for wild boars, this evil spirit is particularly sensitive. Therefore, facing Lin Ye, even a wild boar that was used to running rampant in the forest did not dare to be careless at all. But as a beast, compared to humans, the wild boar's endurance is still limited after all, and it is impossible to be as patient as humans. So after a period of confrontation, the wild boar finally couldn't bear it anymore. Roar! As the confrontation time passed, the wild boar continued to kick and hit the ground, its patience gradually evaporated, and its already red eyes became redder and redder. Finally, the wild boar couldn't bear it any longer. After a roar, it kicked its front hooves heavily on the ground, rushed out, and slammed into Lin Ye. But facing the oncoming wild boar, Lin Ye didn't have any fear in his eyes. Instead, he was calm and scary. In the angry roar of the wild boar, when the wild boar was less than 3 meters away from itself, Lin Ye suddenly activated the 6 fantasy of Phoenix dance, and instantly jumped up to a height of more than 5 meters. Because of Lin Ye's avoidance, the wild boar suddenly hit a big tree behind Lin Ye and staggered for a while. Lin Ye took advantage of this opportunity, changed his body shape, flew down quickly, circulated Jiang Qi, exploded with all his strength, and stabbed the wild boar's back with a sword. Then, the 6 illusions of Phoenix dance started to work again, and Lin Ye suddenly flew to the side of the wild boar, holding the long sword in his hand, and pulled it sharply with the help of gravity. The sharp long sword followed Lin Ye directly, slashed down the back of the wild boar, passed through its belly, and came to the other side of the wild boar, almost cutting open the whole body of the wild boar. Rolling blood mixed with the wild boar's internal organs suddenly continued to slide down from the abdominal wound. The sudden severe pain caused the wild boar to howl miserably. Although the wild boar has extremely strong vitality, Lin Ye's attack was too fast and caused 2 serious injuries. Therefore, the wild boar's howl suddenly stopped almost instantly. As its huge body lost its vitality, the wild boar's body couldn't help but fall heavily to the ground. Is this wild boar enough to eat for several days? Pulling out his long sword, he looked at the wild boar lying on the ground. The blood gushing from the wild boar's belly had already accumulated into a pool of blood on the ground covered with fallen leaves. Lin Ye muttered to himself and put his hand on the wild boar's body. Then, with a flash of light, the wild boar was directly taken into Jade Perry. Although after training, Lin Ye was very strong, so it was not a problem to carry the wild boar. But it would still be too difficult to carry such a heavy wild boar back from the depths of the forest to the Holy Soul village. So since there is storage space for jade pendants, it is natural to use it rationally. After hunting the wild boar, Lin Ye ended the day's hunting, activated the 6 illusions of Phoenix dance, and rushed back to the Holy Soul village from the depths of the forest. By a small river outside Holy Soul village, Lin Ye cleaned the wild boar, briefly cut its body into pieces, and then took it home. It was noon, and old Jack returned home from doing farm work in the fields. Seeing the wild boar meat displayed in the hall, old Jack couldn't help but widen his eyes and his heart was filled with shock. "Xiao, where did you hunt such a big wild boar?" "I met him when I was practicing swordsmanship in the back mountain, and I brought him back by the way." Lin Ye wiped his sword and replied calmly. "Are there so many wild animals in the back mountains now?" Thinking that Lin Ye had often encountered various wild beasts recently, old Jack couldn't help but be a little surprised, but he had no doubts. After all, it only took one morning at most. Where could Lin Ye go? Hey! It seems that Xiao, you are indeed a soul master seedling. His eyes swept over the divided wild boar body on the ground in shock, and old Jack couldn't help but marvel. I'm afraid only the legendary soul masters can hunt such a big wild boar. My grandson is capable of hunting such ferocious beasts even though he is born with full soul power. This is the seed of a natural soul master. So what if it's a useless martial spirit? With the full innate soul power of my child, discarding the martial spirit has no fighting power, but abandoning the martial spirit to practice swordsmanship, isn't it possible? Xiao. Our family can't finish eating such a big wild boar. You can bring some to Xiao San's family. You can hunt such a big wild boar. Although you don't want to say it, the sword that Gai Tanghao made for you, it has also been used in many ways. As if he thought of something, old Jack couldn't help but say. Well, I understand. Hearing old Jack's words, Lin Ye nodded and put the sword back into its scabbard. Then he randomly picked 2 large pieces of wild boar meat on the ground, tied them with hemp rope through the bones, and walked towards Tang San's house. All the way to Tang San's house. In the blacksmith shop, Tang San was still forging iron, but Tang Hao was missing. Hearing the footsteps outside the door, Tang San turned his head and saw Lin Ye coming in. Tang San, this is the wild boar I hunted today. I can't finish some of it, so I'll give you and Uncle Tang Hao a few pieces. Walking into the blacksmith shop, Lin Ye put the wild boar meat on Tang San's table and said. No need. No need. It's already enough trouble for you and Grandpa Jack. These wild boars are too valuable. Seeing Lin Ye's actions, Tang San quickly put down the forging hammer, picked up the wild boar meat on the table and prepared to push it back. But under Lin Ye's insistence, and after learning that Lin Ye still had more wild boar meat in his house, Tang San finally chose to accept it. Lin Ye, thank you so much to you and Grandpa Jack. Looking at the wild boar meat on the table, Tang San sighed and looked at Lin Ye with complicated eyes. I thought that the playmate in front of me was just an ordinary child, but he had perseverance and perseverance that ordinary people could not match. But Tang San didn't expect that Lin Ye actually had such terrifying strength. Such a large piece of wild boar meat, the owner of these wild boar meats is definitely a giant. Lin Ye was able to hunt such a huge wild boar, plus the bear meat and tiger meat he had given away. Tang San suddenly felt a little frustrated. Seeing something strange in Tang San's eyes, Lin Ye was a little surprised. Tang San, what's wrong with you? After hearing Lin Ye's words, it seemed as if he suddenly made a decision in his heart. Tang San took a deep breath and said to Lin Ye seriously, Lin Ye, I want to challenge you. Chapter 16. You want to challenge me? Hearing Tang San's words, Lin Ye couldn't help but frown, feeling a little surprised in his heart. But after looking at Tang San, he remembered that when Tang San was forging iron before, he was quite skillful and had good strength. In addition, he had always been doubtful about whether Tang San had any martial arts skills. After only thinking for a moment, Lin Ye chose to agree. Okay. I promise you. But when will it be decided? 1 month later. Looking at the iron block on his blacksmithing table that had been forged to the size of a discus, Tang San took a deep breath and said in a deep voice. Okay. Then in 1 month. Lin Ye responded. A month passed in a flash. This day. In the early morning, the rising sun rises in the east and the sky is filled with morning glow. On the mountainside behind Holy Soul Village, under a few big trees on the mountainside, Lin Ye stood under the trees holding a long sword, eyes closed tightly, as if feeling something. Suddenly, a gust of breeze blew by, and pieces of fallen leaves fell from the big trees. Feeling the leaves falling above his head, Lin Ye suddenly opened his eyes and swung out the long sword in his hand. Brush! Accompanied by the whistling sound of the long sword piercing the air, a silver light suddenly appeared in the air. Lin Ye swung his sword and instantly pierced a fallen leaf. Then, Lin Ye's eyes were as bright as lightning. As he moved lightly, he quickly drew out the long sword in his right hand. Amidst the bursts of sound piercing the air, the sharp sword light kept flashing in the air. In just a few breaths, when the sword light disappeared, Lin Ye's long sword was already strung with a bunch of fallen leaves. Hey! After practicing, Lin Ye shook off the fallen leaves from the long sword, put the long sword back, and let out a long breath. The most basic and important thing in sword training is vision. Picking on fallen leaves is the most effective training method. After nearly 2 months of practice, Lin Ye's eyesight has basically reached the standard. After passing the basic level and practicing, Lin Ye has already mastered the Douluo 9 swords. Although he has not yet fully mastered it, Lin Ye is now able to skillfully use all 9 sword styles of Douluo 9 swords. After Lin Ye finished practicing, there was a sudden sound of footsteps at the foot of the mountain. Then, a little boy wearing linen clothes was seen walking quickly from a distance. It was Tang San. 1 month, are you ready? Sheathing the long sword behind her, Lin Ye asked slowly when Tang San approached. Already prepared. Hearing Lin Ye's words, Tang San subconsciously touched the iron ring on his wrist, his eyes serious. Very good. Let's start now. A faint smile appeared at the corner of Lin Ye's mouth. Lin Ye, you don't use a sword. Seeing Lin Ye put the long sword back into the wooden scabbard behind his back, as if he had no intention of using the sword, Tang San couldn't help but be a little confused. Since you don't have weapons, I naturally don't know how to use weapons. I don't want to be defeated without force. Regarding Tang San's question, Lin Ye couldn't help but smile lightly, but shook his head. Hearing Lin Ye's answer, Tang San couldn't help but straighten his brows, thinking to himself. I almost forgot, Lin Ye doesn't know about my hidden weapon. But since it's a duel, I have no intention of using hidden weapons anyway, so let's just use fists and kicks to determine the outcome. Tang San's eyes gradually became serious. Then let's get started. After hearing Tang San's words, Lin Ye withdrew a certain distance, and Tang San also withdrew a certain distance. There was a tacit agreement between the two to leave a distance of more than 10 meters. Boom! With preparations completed, Tang San, as the challenger, took the lead in launching an attack. He stepped on the ground and after a muffled sound, he immediately rushed out. He clenched his right fist with the same hand and swung towards Lin. The face of night goes away. But facing Tang San's attack, Lin Ye still looked indifferent. Just when Tang San's fist was about to hit Lin Ye's face, Lin Ye moved back like a feather blown by the wind. He turned slightly to avoid the punch, and at the same time, he shot out instantly. This punch opens. Seeing Lin Ye's response, the wind was light and the clouds were calm. Tang San couldn't help but look solemn, and after letting out a low shout, he punched Lin Ye with his other hand. At the same time, his right foot quickly kicked Lin Ye's abdomen. But in the face of Tang San's attack, Lin Ye still dodged with a single movement of his body, and then quickly opened Tang San's attack, but he had no intention of fighting back. How can it be? After several consecutive attacks, his own attacks were easily dodged, and Tang San couldn't help but feel disbelief. His attack speed is not slow, how could he be dodged so easily? Could it be that he was seen through? I do not believe. Gritting his teeth, Tang San used Ghost Shadow this time. Suddenly, Tang San's speed suddenly increased several times, and his whole body almost turned into an afterimage. Originally, it could only attack in one direction. But with the use of Ghost Shadow, after Tang San launched the attack in front of Lin Ye, he moved and instantly arrived behind Lin Ye and launched another attack on Lin Ye. Facing Tang San's sudden outburst, Lin Ye finally became serious this time. The Feng Gulai Huan, which was originally used for dodge, was now operating at full capacity. Lin Ye instantly burst out with a speed that was not inferior to Tang San's, and began to use tricks and fists and kicks with Tang San. I saw the figures of the two people moving rapidly on the empty grass. One moment they came to the sea of flowers, and the next they came to the big tree. The two figures kept colliding with each other. But after all, the Ghost Shadow is a footwork used to match the use of concealed weapons, and concealed weapons are a kind of weapon that pays attention to the point of not being released and killing with one release, so it does not need battery life. Therefore, the Ghost Shadow naturally becomes a footwork that sacrifices endurance and improves explosive power and flexibility. Facing Feng Gulai Huan, although Guiying Minzong is comparable in flexibility, it is far inferior in speed and endurance. So as time went by, I faced Lin Ye who became a little more serious. The offense and defense began to change positions, and Tang San gradually became the defender. Originally, the two of them could still fight back and forth, but due to the prolonged use of Ghost Shadow, their bodies began to be unable to support themselves, and Tang San couldn't help but feel increasingly tired. Now, facing Lin Ye's offensive, Tang San also had to use the extreme purple demon eyes in conjunction with the Ghost Shadow to barely withstand Lin Ye's attack. No. We must fight quickly. Seeing that the situation was getting worse and worse, and the outcome was gradually tilting towards defeat, Tang San gritted his teeth, and after weighing the pros and cons in his mind, he finally made a decision. Now we have to use the Xiantian technique, using the ghost shadow tracer and the purple demonic eyes, in conjunction with the Swan Yuhan to deliver the final blow. If I fail this time, I will admit defeat. Already at the end of his rope, Tang San resolutely decided to put all his cards on the line and make the final blow to determine the outcome. He quickly exchanged blows with Lin Ye again, and then quickly retreated a few meters. At this moment, Tang San suddenly activated all the remaining Xian Tian Gong internal energy in his body and unleashed the mysterious Jade Hand. At the same time, the Ghost Shadow Tracer and the Purple Demonic Eyes were also activated to their limit. One blow will determine the outcome. Looking at Lin Ye who was right in front of him, Tang San let out a low drink, and the inner energy of the Xian Tian Gong surged in his body. The skin of his right hand almost instantly turned into the color of white jade, and a strong sense of power surged in his right hand. After a low shout, Tang San moved and instantly turned into an afterimage and rushed towards Lin Ye. In his eyes, the purple devil eyes exuded a shining purple light. The black jade hand in his right hand clenched tightly into a fist and slammed hard. He waved towards Lin Ye. Chapter 17. Looking at Lin Ye right in front of me. At this moment, Tang San activated the Xian Tian technique with all his strength, and the ghost shadow and the purple devil eyes were also pushed to the limit, just to fully unleash the power of the Swan Yu hand and deliver the final blow to Lin Ye. Final blow. Facing Tang San's sudden attack, Lin Ye frowned slightly when he heard Tang San's low shout, but his face remained calm. But this time, Lin Ye had no intention of getting entangled with Tang San anymore. Since you want to decide the outcome with one strike, then I will accompany you with one strike to determine the outcome. With Tang San running the Xian Tian technique with all his strength, activating the ghost shadow and the purple demonic eyes, in order to use the Swan Yu hand with maximum power, Tang San's strength was brought into full play. In the Swan Yu hand state, Tang San's white jade-like right hand was clenched tightly. While moving at high speed, the crystal-clear white jade-like fist tore through the air, sending out a harsh whistling sound in the air. This punch was already powerful enough to compete with Lin Ye's own strength. But it's a pity that Lin Ye still has the 9 Yang divine art that he hasn't used yet. Boom! Facing the oncoming Tang San, Lin Ye suddenly kicked to the ground. After a muffled sound, Lin Ye's figure almost instantly turned into an afterimage and disappeared from the place. The next second, the two met in mid-air. Looking at Lin Ye who suddenly appeared in front of him, Tang San's eyes did not waver in the slightest. Instead, after giving a low shout, he clenched his fisted Xian Yu hand across the sky and waved towards Lin Ye. Faced with Tang San's return punch, Lin Ye did not dodge, but instead swung out the same punch and went straight to meet it. Although Tang San's punch was comparable to his previous power, it was a pity that he had only used pure physical power before, and the 9 Yang divine art he possessed had yet to be used. He swung his right fist violently, and while exploding all the power in his body, Lin Ye also activated the 9 Yang magic. With the operation of the 9 Yang divine art, the 9 Yang true qi surged in the body, and Lin Ye's whole body glowed with a faint golden light. With the strength of the physical body and the blessing of Zhuyang Zhenkai, at this moment, the power burst out by Lin Ye with one punch was close to 2,000 kilograms. With this punch, let alone Tang San, even if he was possessed by a top-notch beast spirit master's spirit, he would not be Lin Ye's current opponent if he hadn't activated his enhanced spirit skills, and Tang San would be even less likely. In a shrill roar, two fists hitting each other. Boom! Suddenly, a dull crashing sound erupted. The next moment, Tang San couldn't help but change his expression, and felt an incomparable force suddenly coming from the other fist, making his own fist numb. Under this force, Tang San couldn't help but fly backwards immediately. After falling to the ground, he took a dozen steps back before barely steadying his body. What a strength! After the fists struck each other, Swan Yu's hand was released. Tang San clenched his still numb right hand, looked up at Lin Ye, and couldn't help but be filled with shock. Because he had practiced the Xian Tian technique and had been training since he was young, Tang San thought he was quite strong. Even ordinary adults probably wouldn't be able to match him. With the blessing of Xian Tian Gong's internal strength, he can lift a forging hammer weighing 300 to 400 kilograms, with a strength of at least 500 kilograms. And while running the Xian Tian Gong with all his strength and activating the Xian Yu hand, Tang San felt that the ultimate punch he made with all his strength was close to 1,000 catties. But even so, he was still no match for Lin Ye. Moreover, when the two fists hit each other, he was actually knocked away. After landing, he staggered back for more than 10 steps before he stabilized his body. Such a huge gap proves that Lin Ye's power far exceeds his own. Could it be that the force of Lin Yi's punch just now exceeded 1,000 pounds? Tang San's heart surged with turmoil, and he was a little unbelievable for a moment. However, compared to Tang San's shock, Lin Yi withdrew his fist, but felt very calm in his heart. Although Tang San was knocked away with one punch, in fact, the strength Lin Yi exerted was only just over 1,000 catties. Originally Lin Yi planned to use the 9 Yang divine art with all his strength, but the moment his fists collided with Tang San's, Lin Yi discovered that Tang San's strength didn't seem very strong. If all the strength is unleashed at the same time, and the 9 Yang magic is activated. With the blessing of Zhuyang Zhenkai, Lin Yi's burst of strength could reach nearly 2,000 kilograms. With such powerful strength, Tang San's arm might be broken if the two fists collided. So the moment before the two fists collided, Lin Yi urgently slowed down the operation of the 9 Yang divine art. He only used the 9 Yang divine art to protect the body, but did not use the blessing of the 9 Yang true qi. But even so, when the two fists collided, Lin Yi's body's 9 Yang true qi ability to protect the body and counter shock still directly knocked Tang San away. I lost. Looking at Lin Yi, and feeling shocked in his heart, Tang San couldn't help but sigh and said. He had seen Lin Yi swinging the forging hammer like an arm before. Although Tang San was also shocked, it was because of the Xian Tian Kong, Ghost Shadow Trace, Purple Demon Eyes and Xian Jade Hands. Tang San didn't feel that he was far behind. Even if Lin Yi was strong, it didn't mean he was strong in combat. But now, after the battle with Lin Yi, and finding that he had been completely crushed, Tang San no longer dared to think so. He hid his strength at first, but it seems that Lin Yi also hid his strength. Tang San felt a little self-deprecating in his heart. Tang San, you probably haven't used your full strength, right? When Tang San's heart was filled with complexity, Lin Yi suddenly spoke calmly. Hearing Lin Yi's words, Tang San couldn't help but raise his head immediately, his eyes a little shocked. How do you know? You have been hammering that piece of iron before. When I came to your house several times, I found that you seemed to be making something with that piece of iron. Then today, you suddenly had that wrist guard on your hand. What you made it should be the wrist guard on your hand, right? This is a weapon, right? You spent so long building it, this weapon should be your trump card. Compared to your boxing and kicking skills, you often look at the wrist guard in your hand unconsciously. It can be seen that this wrist guard is your strongest trump card. As if knowing the doubts in Tang San's heart, Lin Yi said slowly to himself. It's too early for you to admit defeat now. Just use your wrist guard and let's have a real duel. I'll use my sword and you use your weapon. How about that? Lin Yi suddenly looked at Tang San. My sleeve arrows. Hearing Lin Yi's words, Tang San couldn't help but touch the sleeve arrow in his hand and whispered to himself. Suddenly, Tang San took a deep breath and looked at Lin Yi suddenly, his eyes full of seriousness. Okay, I promise you. You use your sword, and I use my hidden weapon. This time, we will really show off. Is your weapon called a concealed weapon? Lin Yi couldn't help but move his eyes, thinking deeply in his heart. Okay. Then let me see how powerful your sleeve arrows are. As Lin Yi spoke slowly, he stretched out his hand to hold the hilt of the sword behind his back, and pulled the long sword out of the scabbard behind his back, staring at Tang San closely. Chapter 18. Holy Soul Village, on the back mountain, on the mountainside. The breeze blows and the fallen leaves are flying. On a piece of grass, several big trees stood. Beside the big trees, Lin Yi held a long sword and slowly put it down, staring at Tang San with lightning eyes. Tang San, with his eyes filled with purple light, slowly raised the wrist guard on his right hand. Lin Yi, be careful. My sleeve arrow shoots a sharp steel needle. It is powerful enough to penetrate wood 3 fingers thick. It is also silent and difficult to detect. You must be careful. Looking at Lin Yi, Tang San raised his wrist guard and said in a deep voice. However, although he told Lin Yi to be careful, Tang San held a negative attitude towards Lin Yi being able to block his sleeve arrows. That's right, in terms of strength, Tang San admitted that he was no match for Lin Yi. But as a disciple of the Tang sect, Tang San knew his own hidden weapons very well. Hidden weapons, the key word is the word secret. Concealed weapons are often very small, easy to carry around, and when fired, are almost silent and extremely fast. If you are not prepared, even experts will fall victim to it. And Lin Yi, although powerful, was not considered a master in Tang San's opinion. Although he said the word hidden weapon, there are no hidden weapons in this world. Even if he said it, Lin Ye would not know what a hidden weapon is. In this way, Lin Ye was almost defenseless. Facing his own hidden weapon, although Lin Ye had a long sword, only a handful of swordsman masters could stop the hidden weapon with a long sword. These swordsmanship masters are often people who have been immersed in the art of swordsmanship for several years or even decades, and swordsmanship has often become instinctive. But Lin Ye's sword was forged under Tang San's watch, and it was full of calculations. Lin Ye had only been practicing swordsmanship for more than 2 months. It was definitely impossible to reach the level of some swordsman masters, who could identify positions by listening to sounds and move the sword according to their heart. Therefore, in Tang San's opinion, it was almost impossible for Lin Ye to stop his hidden weapon with his sword. Thinking in his heart that he knew Lin Ye's swordsmanship level, Tang San was full of confidence at this time. I know, come on. Lin Ye held the long sword in his hand, stared at Tang San, and said slowly. Good. Tang San responded with a shout, and immediately raised his sleeve arrows. In his eyes, the purple demon eyes were activated to the limit, targeting the hem of Lin Ye's upper body. Because he believed that Lin Ye was incapable of resisting his sleeve arrows, Tang San would naturally not intentionally hurt Lin Ye in this competition. The reason why it is aimed at the hem of the upper body is because the area of the clothes is large. As long as Lin Ye didn't run around, it would be impossible for the Shijian to shoot elsewhere. After aligning, Tang San immediately moved his right hand, touching the launching device of the sleeve arrows. Call out! Accompanied by a whirling sound of the machine and an almost inaudible sound of breaking through the air, a steel needle suddenly shot out from the launch port of the sleeve arrow and shot towards Lin Ye. The steel needle of the Shijian is extremely small, almost the same thickness as a sewing needle, 1 finger long, and the tip is twisted in the shape of a barb. If you shoot someone and want to pull it out, it will definitely be very painful. Coming! When the steel needle shot by Shijian came through the air, because he had been practicing his skills and eyesight according to the method recorded in the Douluo 9 swords, Lin Ye instantly emitted a silver light that shot through the air, and his eyes suddenly lit up. A flash! The steel needle moved so fast that it arrived in front of Lin Ye in almost the blink of an eye. According to Tang San's opinion, if a swordsman's swordsmanship does not reach the level of identifying the position by listening to sounds and following the movement of the sword with the heart, it would be very difficult to stop a hidden weapon. Lin Ye had not reached this level, and it was theoretically impossible to stop his hidden weapon. But, this refers to the general situation. This is true for ordinary swordsmen, but Lin Ye is not an ordinary swordsman. Lin Ye practices Douluo 9 swords. The broken arrow style, one of the 9 great sword styles of Douluo 9 swords, is specifically designed to target weapons such as hidden weapons. In more than 2 months, Lin Ye has learned the broken arrow style. Although I haven't fully mastered it, I can already use it skillfully. With the Douluo 9 swords breaking arrow style in his possession, even if Lin Ye had not reached the level of identifying positions by listening to sounds and using the sword to follow his heart, he could still withstand hidden weapons. Douluo 9 swords, broken arrow style. Just when the steel needle was about to arrive in front of him, Lin Ye shouted in his heart and finally activated the breaking arrow style of Douluo 9 swords. In an instant, Lin Ye swung out his right hand, and saw a flash of sword light. The long sword suddenly slashed out in a strange trajectory. The sword light was erratic, like waves in the sea, flowing erratically, and like an antelope hanging its horns, leaving no trace. In just an instant, he hit the steel needle shot by Shijian in an inexplicable manner. Chiang! Only to hear, with a crisp sound of gold and iron clashing, the direction of the sharp steel needle shot was unexpectedly cut off by Lin Ye's sword, and whoosh! Was shot to the ground. The finger-long steel needle was completely shot almost instantly. Submerged in the grass. How can this be? Seeing what happened in front of him, Tang San couldn't help but open his mouth wide, his heart filled with horror. How could it be possible that his sleeve arrow was actually blocked by Lin Ye with his sword? But didn't Lin Ye just start learning the sword more than a month ago? Could it be that in less than 2 months, he has entered the realm of a top swordsman so quickly? Is this a monster? The duel with Lin Ye ended in defeat. With mixed feelings, Tang San walked all the way down the back mountain and returned home. At home, his father Tang Hao has already gotten up and is sitting at the table. Seeing Tang San return home and already get up, Tang Hao, who had been waiting in the living room for a long time, couldn't help but frown and asked. Why did you come back so late today? Today Lin Ye and I agreed to have a discussion in the back mountain, so I came back a little late. Tang San lowered his head and replied. How about it, which one of you wins? After hearing Tang San's words, Tang Hao poured a bowl of wine and asked casually. I lost, I can't beat you at all. There was a trace of bitterness in the corners of Tang San's mouth, and he clenched his fists, but was unable to loosen them. Hee hee. Tang Hao twitched the corners of his mouth, raised the bowl in his hand and took a sip of wine. Dad, aren't you surprised? Do you think I will lose? Seeing Tang Hao's indifferent expression, Tang San couldn't help but ask. Tang Hao nodded lightly. He was indeed not surprised at all. Ever since Lin Ye realized the cloak hammering technique in front of him, Tang Hao had a clear understanding of Lin Ye's evil talent. In addition, when Lin Ye sent wild boar meat a month ago, Tang Hao carefully observed the wild boar meat. With his knowledge, he could tell at a glance that the wild boar meat came from a giant animal with a length of more than 3 meters. Wild boar. Based on the sword wounds on the wild boar, Tang Hao also judged that when Lin Ye hunted the wild boar, he killed it with one blow from top to bottom with his sword. Being able to hunt down such a ferocious wild boar with a length of 3 meters so easily, and also be able to bring the wild boar back. This Lin Ye's strength is somewhat terrifying. Based on Tang Hao's understanding of his children, he is definitely far from his opponent. It would be weird if he could win. Chapter 19. From the day when Wuhan awakened, 3 months passed in a flash. In the blink of an eye, it was the day when Noting Junior Soul Master Academy started, which was also the day when Lin Ye was about to enroll in the Soul Master Academy. Originally, on the day when the martial soul awakened, Tang Hao was determined not to let Tang San go to the Soul Master Academy. But a week before Noting Academy was about to start, Tang Hao finally regretted it, came to see old Jack, and promised to let Tang San go to the Soul Master Academy. In Holy Soul Village, if you want to ask who gives old Jack the most headache, it must be Tang Hao. Tang Hao actually surrendered, which made old Jack happy for a long time. On this day, the breeze was blowing and the sun was shining brightly. It was a good day for traveling. In the morning, after dinner, Lin Ye packed up his things at home, and his grandfather Jack took the martial arts certificate he wanted to bring, and then he was ready to set off. After going to Tang San's house and calling Tang San, the three of them left Holy Soul Village together and hurried towards Noting City. Passing through the large farmland outside Holy Soul Village and along the banks of the gurgling river, the three of them walked all the way. Although Lin Ye had been to Noting City with his grandfather old Jack before, going there this time was completely different from before. I used to go on a trip with my grandpa Jack, and would come back in the afternoon. But this time, after arriving at the Soul Master Academy, Lin Ye may have to stay at the Soul Master Academy for less than half a year. He has never left his grandfather Jack. Although Lin Ye has been independent and mature since he was a child, he can't help but become a little silent at this time. On the side, watching the familiar scenery around him disappear step by step, Tang San was also a little restless. The journey from Saint Soul Village to Noting City is long and takes several hours. It is not an option to continue to be anxious like this. So, Tang San decided to ask old Jack for some information about Noting Academy. Grandpa Jack, can you tell me where the Junior Soul Master Academy in Noting City is? Walking slowly along the river, Tang San asked curiously. Noting City Junior Soul Master Academy. This is a place that specializes in training soul masters. It will teach you about soul masters, but I don't know what it is specifically. After all, I have never attended it. Old Jack explained, stroking his long beard and smiling. But I heard that in addition to teaching you about soul masters, the Junior Soul Master Academy will also teach you some other commonly used knowledge, such as writing, geography, arithmetic, etc. Although you have learned these in private schools in the village, you only have a general understanding. When you go to the Junior Soul Master Academy, the teachers there will give you more and more complete knowledge. You must study hard. Well, Grandpa Jack, does it cost money to study in the Soul Master Academy? If so, how much does it cost? Tang San thought for a while and continued to ask. Silly boy. The Soul Master Academy is not my home, so it will definitely cost money. Old Jack was a little dumbfounded. But don't worry, you and Xiao are using the work-study student quota. The work-study student quota in Soul Master College is free of registration fees, tuition fees, and accommodation fees. You only need to pay for your own meals. As for the money for food, because the working study college will arrange some chores for you to do, you can get a certain amount of compensation as long as you clean in the college. Although it is only a few copper soul coins, it is enough for you to eat for a day. Old Jack smiled and comforted again. So that's it. Tang San nodded thoughtfully. Chatting all the way. Starting in the morning, after several hours of driving, the three of them were finally about to arrive in Notting City just after noon. In the distance, the endless and towering city wall gradually came into view. On the black city wall, small dots stood on the city wall, which were the soldiers responsible for guarding the city wall. Arriving at the entrance of the city gate, there was a long queue. Although Notting City is only a border city of the Tiandu Empire, because it is located at the junction of the Tiandu Empire and the Star Luo Empire, merchants from the two countries often come here to do business, so Notting City is quite prosperous. Under the leadership of Old Jack, the three of them lined up, and after paying the entry fee to the gatekeeper, they finally entered the city of Notting. Notting City is worthy of being rumored to be a big city. Although it was not his first time here, when Lin Ye first entered the city, he was still attracted by the clean and tidy houses around him, the clock tower standing in the distance, as well as various shops and street stalls. Such a bustling and lively city is really not comparable to Holy Soul Village. Lin Ye couldn't help but yearn for it. Excuse me, where is the Notting Junior Soul Master Academy? After entering Notting City and walking for a while, Old Jack asked a middle-aged man who was setting up a stall on the side of the street. Although Old Jack is very familiar with Notting College, because Saint Soul Village has not produced a child with Soul Master qualifications for many years, Old Jack has long forgotten where Notting College is. From here, walk straight along this street, turn left when you reach the end, and then keep walking, at the end is Notting College. Vendors pointing the way. Oh, thank you. Old Jack leaned on a cane and politely thanked him. Kids, let's go. The three of them walked along the road pointed by the vendor. After walking for more than 10 minutes, we finally arrived at Notting College. Looking at the towering arch in front of him, Old Jack couldn't help but sigh, Xiaosan, you are going to Notting College soon. When Grandpa takes you to register, Grandpa will go back. At Notting College, you must not pay attention to your studies and listen to the teacher. The semester in the college lasts almost half a year. When the semester ends, it will be the Chinese New Year. Grandpa will come to pick you up then. I know, Grandpa. After a moment of silence, Lin Ye said. Although he knew that he would definitely leave his Grandpa Jack in the future, Lin Ye had already had deep feelings for him since he was raised by his Grandpa Jack. Hearing that they were about to separate, Lin Ye couldn't help but feel a little sad and irritable. However, with Lin Ye's character, he still won't show these emotions on his face. In the future, he will leave Notting City and his trip to the Soul Master Academy should be regarded as a trial. In the future, when I become successful, I will come back to repay my grandfather. Lin Ye thought to himself. Walk all the way towards Notting College. Probably at noon, many students returned to Notting College from Notting City. All I saw were boys and girls wearing standard uniforms, either running or in a hurry. One by one, they ran quickly from behind, passed through the iron gate under the arch, and entered the academy. But just as Old Jack, Lin Ye and Tang San were preparing to pass through the iron gate, a young man suddenly flashed over from the side and blocked the iron gate. Stop, what do you want to do? Chapter 20. Haha, little brother, you are the concierge of Notting College, right? I am Jack, the village chief of Holy Soul Village. I am here to send these two children from our village to register for Notting College. Looking at the concierge in front of him, Old Jack bent over and smiled apologetically. What Soul Village? Holy Soul Village? Haha, I think it's the Fart Soul Village. You said you are going to sign up for our Notting Academy? What a joke. You are so poor, I'm afraid you can't even get a single silver soul coin, and you're still signing up our Soul Master Academy? Come on, we don't accept beggars here. Hearing Old Jack's words, the concierge first picked his ears, then looked at Old Jack with contempt, and said disdainfully while waving his hands as if to ward off flies. You! The Holy Soul Village, which he had worked hard for all his life, was insulted as a Far Soul Village. Old Jack couldn't help but feel angry. The hand holding the crutch couldn't help but clenched tightly, and blue veins popped out in his skinny hands. But as if he thought of something, Old Jack suppressed his anger and said with a reluctant smile, we are not officially enrolled in school. Both children have quotas for work-study students and do not need to pay fees. Oh, you changed your mind? There are no work-study students in our college for how many years, and two suddenly appeared this year? Haha. It's really funny. Bring me your martial arts certificates, let's see what kind of genius can emerge from a garbage village. The concierge still had a look of disdain on his face, and stretched out his hand directly, asking old Jack for Lin Ye and Tang San's martial spirit certificates. Hearing that the concierge was still insulting his village, old Jack couldn't help but a flash of anger in his eyes, but he still took out Lin Ye and Tang San's martial spirit certificates and handed them to the concierge. On the side, seeing old Jack's movements, Lin Ye couldn't help but his eyes were a little cold and he clenched his hands tightly. As the grandson of old Jack, Lin Ye naturally knew his grandfather's love for Holy Soul Village. After hearing the concierge insulting Holy Soul Village twice, Lin Ye could imagine the anger in Grandpa Old Jack's heart at this moment. But Grandpa Jack once taught Lin Ye to keep a low profile when going to strange places outside, especially big cities. Don't cause trouble unless it's absolutely necessary, so Lin Ye held back. After all, Grandpa had not been substantially harmed. But in his heart, Lin Ye gave the concierge an ultimatum. If you dare to make Grandpa angry again, I will never tolerate it anymore. Looking at the concierge, Lin Ye's eyes were cold and he secretly clenched his fists. On the other side, after receiving the martial arts certificate handed over by old Jack, the concierge began to read it. But the more he looked at it, the more the concierge frowned. Finally, he simply smiled disdainfully and threw away the 2 martial spirit certificates in his hand. Haha, it's really ridiculous. What are these things? Blue silver grass with innate soul power, and begonia flower with innate soul power. I have been a concierge for so many years, and I have never seen such a martial soul and innate soul. Li, let me tell you, old man, when you forge martial arts certificates, you should make them more decent, okay? With these 2 certificates of yours, you are simply treating others as fools. You're talking nonsense. I didn't forge a martial spirit certificate. These 2 martial spirit certificates were personally issued by the spirit master who came to our village. Please don't spit on me. After hearing what the concierge said, old Jack couldn't bear it anymore and couldn't help but said angrily. Forging a martial arts certificate is a serious crime. Although he knew that his 2 martial arts certificates were true, old Jack couldn't tolerate being rashly accused of such a crime. What? Are you angry with embarrassment? Humph. Old man, a poor guy like you doesn't want to enter our nodding college. Get out of here. With that said, the concierge stretched out his hand to push old Jack away. At this moment, Lin Ye couldn't bear it anymore. Court death. Seeing that the concierge actually wanted to hurt his grandfather, old Jack, Lin Ye's eyes suddenly turned cold. With a flash of figure, Lin Ye appeared in front of the concierge in an instant, then stretched out his right hand, grabbed the concierge's hand, and twisted it hard. Ah! Suddenly, the concierge let out a scream like a slaughtering pig. Seeing that the concierge was disgusted and beaten, Lin Ye was too lazy to stop. While grabbing the concierge's hand, Lin Ye kicked out directly, hitting the concierge's chest, and instantly kicked the concierge out. After flying several meters, the concierge hit the iron door hard, knocking it open, and then fell heavily to the ground. Ouch! Struggling to get up from the ground, the concierge held the iron door with his right hand and stood up with difficulty. His left hand was still trembling in pain because of Lin Ye's twist. Looking at Lin Ye, the concierge couldn't help but suddenly showed anger on his face. You kid, you dare to do something, I want you to look good. Although his left hand was injured, in his extreme anger, the concierge directly picked up a stone on the ground with his right hand, with a ferocious expression on his face, and suddenly rushed towards Lin Ye. Xiao, be careful. Old Jack couldn't help being shocked when he saw the concierge's actions. Tang San, on the other hand, looked solemnly, and as if he had inadvertently raised his right hand, vaguely aiming it at the concierge. But after listening to Grandpa Old Jack's warning, Lin Ye did not respond. Instead, he went straight up to him, activated the 9 Sun magic skill, and swung his right fist straight towards the stone that the concierge had slapped. Seeing Lin Ye's actions, the concierge couldn't help but reveal the joy of revenge on his face, as if to say, this kid wants to catch the stone with his fist, what a fool. But just in the concierge's eyes, Lin Ye's fist collided with the stone. But because of the training of Dragon Elephant Prujna Kung Fu and the protection of Zhuyang Zhenkai, the stone did not hurt Lin Ye. Instead, it was directly shattered by Lin Ye's punch. What? Seeing what happened in front of him, the concierge couldn't help but widen his eyes and his whole body was covered. In the shocked eyes of the concierge, Lin Ye's fist directly smashed the stone in the concierge's right hand, drew a strange trajectory in the air, and hit the concierge hard on the face. In an instant, the entire face of the concierge was deformed, his wide-eyed eyes nearly bulged out of their sockets, and several bloody teeth were thrown out of his mouth during the deflection. Under the huge force coming from his face, the concierge flew out again. After flying diagonally for several meters, he fell heavily to the ground and rolled several times. The sharp pain on his face made the concierge scream in pain and writhe on the ground. "Meng, wait! I am like the concierge of Notting College. You dare to hunt geese? Notting College will not let you go." Although there were waves of severe pain on his face, the concierge was extremely resentful in his heart. He used up a lot of teeth, and his mouth was leaky when he spoke, and he screamed in a sad voice. "Humph! I'm just a concierge. I want to see if I, a student with innate soul power who is about to enter school, is not as important as you as a concierge. If the famous Notting College can't even do the most basic fairness and justice come on, then it's okay not to wait for this kind of academy." Lin Ye didn't take the concierge's threat seriously at all and said coldly. While Lin Ye was talking, a voice suddenly came from behind him. What happens? Chapter 21. Hearing the voice coming from behind, Lin Ye couldn't help but look back. I saw a man with a shaved head and a black academic uniform with white bottom walking slowly towards this side. Seeing the man, who was originally bruised and swollen, the concierge couldn't help but showed a flattering look on his face, and hurriedly greeted him, "Master, you are back." "Master, is this a teacher from Notting College?" Hearing the concierge's words, Lin Ye couldn't help but frown, and secretly became wary. I don't know what this teacher's personality is like. If this teacher is trying to protect someone's shortcomings and wants to favor this concierge, then I will be ready to take action. The man named Master responded lightly to the concierge's flattery, and then asked with a frown. "What's going on? Why were you beaten like this?" "Master, you have to make the decision for me." Hearing the master's words, it was as if he had touched the sad part of the concierge. The concierge couldn't help but burst into tears, and then began to cry out for injustice. "Today I was guarding the door here peacefully. These country people came over and said they wanted to sign up, but because they were ignorant, they insisted on me taking them in to sign up. But I am a concierge and I can't leave my post without permission, so I rejected them. But I didn't expect that they threatened me and beat me. Because they were old people and children, I didn't dare to fight back, so I was beaten like this. Master, you have to make the decision for me. How can such a person enroll in our Notting College?" While the concierge pretended to cry, he secretly glanced at Lin Ye with a look full of resentment and revenge. You are so slanderous." On the side, listening to the concierge's words that confused right and wrong and distorted the facts, old Jack was so angry that his whole body was shaking, his beard was trembling, and he said angrily. "It's obvious that you discriminated against us countrymen, saying that our martial arts certificates were forged and wouldn't let us in. And it was you who wanted to push me, so I was beaten by Xiao. How could you talk such nonsense and confuse right and wrong?" "I'm not talking nonsense. It was obviously you who beat me. If I hadn't fought back, how could you three have beaten me like this?" The concierge still insists on this point and forcefully distorts the facts. "Master, you must not be deceived by some villains." After saying that, looking at the master, the concierge still looked like a victim, looking miserable. "Finished." After listening to the concierge's words, the master suddenly said calmly. "It's over." The concierge was stunned for a moment, and suddenly felt something bad in his heart. "You are very smart. I almost believed it when you made it up, but there are too many loopholes in what you said." The master said lightly, raised his right hand, and slowly stretched out a finger. "First, you said that you are dedicated to your duties and very kind, but you called this old gentleman a countryman. This is not something a kind person can say. Second, since you are very loyal to your duties, you should fight back when you are beaten. You should not be beaten like this. Wouldn't you be unable to fulfill your duties? Thirdly, since you are a kind person, shouldn't you not care about this matter? Why did you say in the end that you cannot let them enroll in Notting College? So, you are deceiving me." At the end of the sentence, the master's face suddenly darkened. "Great, Master, I don't." Hearing what the master said, the concierge was so frightened that he was sweating, but he still spoke harshly. "You actually lied." Finding that the concierge still showed no regrets, the master couldn't help but shook his head in disappointment. For people like you, staying at Notting College will simply tarnish the reputation of the college. It seems that I should have a good talk with the college and suggest that they change a concierge. Plop. Hearing the master's words, the concierge couldn't help but fell to his knees with a thud. Master, I was wrong, don't tell the academy, I can't lose this job. Kneeling on the ground, the concierge couldn't help but burst into tears and begged. Too late. The master shook his head lightly and walked towards old Jack. Old sir, can you prove your martial arts skills to me? Looking at old Jack, the master said politely. Here, master, this is our martial soul proof. From the previous concierge's flattery to the master's suggestion that the college change the concierge just now, old Jack, as the village chief, with a full observation skill, immediately guessed that the status of the master in front of him in the academy would definitely not be low. In addition, old Jack was very grateful for the impartial handling of the matter by the master just now, so old Jack couldn't help but enthusiastically handed Lin Ye and Tang San's martial spirit certificates to the master. After receiving the martial spirit certificate, the master began to browse it carefully. While browsing, he glanced at Lin Ye and Tang San from time to time, seeming to be thoughtful. Old sir, your martial spirit has proven to be true. What happened just now was all the concierge's personal behavior. I will let the college punish him. I hope, old man, you will not be biased against the college. Putting down his martial spirit to prove it, the master smiled lightly. No. No. Old Jack said quickly. Thank you, old gentleman. If you don't mind, I will bring the 2 children you brought in to register for you. The master smiled faintly, bowed slightly, and continued. Then thank you, master. Hearing the master's words, old Jack couldn't help but feel very grateful. Xiao, mistress, remember to listen to the teacher in the academy from now on. If grandpa has something else to do, leave first. When the semester is over, grandpa will come to pick you up. Turning to look at Lin Ye and Tang San, old Jack sighed and spoke with some nostalgia. But after saying that, he turned around and left Notting College. Come in with me. After old Jack left, Lin Ye and Tang San followed the master into Notting Academy. In Notting College, the roads are wide and lined with green trees. Lin Ye was a little silent because of the departure of his grandfather Jack. Next to him, Tang San's curious voice suddenly came. Master, are you a teacher in the academy? Why do you ask? Hearing Tang San's words, the master walking in front suddenly stopped and turned around to ask. Because the concierge is so afraid of you, you must be a teacher at the college, and you are the kind with a high status and status. Tang San said very seriously. Haha, what you said is very good, but you guessed wrong. I am just a passerby here, not a teacher here. The master twitched his lips and said calmly. Well, then master, even if you are not a teacher here, you must still be a very famous figure. After thinking for a while, Tang San continued. Why? The master still asked. Because the title of master is not worthy of ordinary teachers. A master can definitely become a teacher, but a teacher may not necessarily become a master. Tang San still looked serious. Master, hehe, your name is Tang San, right? You are really a smart kid. Hearing Tang San's unusual compliments, the master twitched the corners of his mouth, and couldn't help but reveal a stiff smile on his face. The third twin martial soul on the mainland, it seems I have to take the initiative. Twin martial souls. Hearing the master's words, Lin Ye couldn't help but raised his head and looked at Tang San. Tang San's whole body tensed up instantly, his pupils tightened. Chapter 22. Twin martial souls? Master, what are you talking about? Twin martial souls, what are they? I have never heard of them. Although Tang San had a good impression of the master because of his fair treatment of the concierge before, and he also started talking to him just now. But when he heard that the master actually revealed his biggest secret, Tang San couldn't help but tense up. While smiling reluctantly, he unconsciously pointed the sleeve arrow on his wrist at the master, ready to kill and silence him at any time. You don't have to deny it. In fact, not only are you a twin martial soul, he is also a twin martial soul. The master shook his head and looked at Lin Ye as he spoke. You may be curious as to why I know you are twin spirits, right? A stiff smile appeared on the master's face. Lin Ye. Actually, what Tang San said before is right. I am famous in some aspects and am respected as a master by others, and that is in martial arts research. There was a hint of confidence on the master's face. I have studied many kinds of martial spirits, some are powerful and some are weak, including your blue silver grass and begonia flower. These two martial spirits are typical useless martial spirits. Among the hundreds of blue silver grass and begonia flower martial soul masters, it is difficult to find one with soul power. Even if you have soul power, it is usually only 1 or 2 levels. Currently, no blue silver grass soul master or begonia flower soul master has been found whose innate soul power can exceed level 3, and all of your innate soul powers are full. Soul power, this is obviously unreasonable. And I have summarized some laws about Wuhan in the process of many times of Wuhan research. I summarized them into 10, named Wuhan's 10 core competitiveness. According to one of the 10 core competitivenesses of Wuhan that I summarized, the innate soul power that Wuhan can produce is directly proportional to the strength of Wuhan. Both of you have useless martial spirits, but your innate soul power is full. This proves that you obviously have a second martial soul, and it is a very powerful second martial soul. Listening to the master's words, Tang San's originally tense face gradually began to relax, and finally became full of admiration. He admired the master for deducing his twin martial soul through research. On the side, Lin Ye was silent. Because whether the master's derivation process or the result of the derivation was correct for Tang San, it was wrong for Lin Ye. First of all, he is not a twin martial soul, but a triple martial soul. Furthermore, his begonia flower martial spirit is not a useless martial spirit, but a very powerful martial spirit, but it just looks more similar to the ordinary begonia flower martial spirit. Therefore, Lin Ye had no fluctuation in his heart regarding the master's confident derivation. Master, please be my teacher. Originally he was wary of the master, but after listening to the master's words, Tang San became full of admiration. He even bowed deeply to the master and said respectfully, "Teacher? Tang San, do you know what teacher represents?" After hearing Tang San's words, the master took a deep look at Tang San and said, "I know, once a teacher, always a father." As he spoke, Tang San seriously knelt on the ground in front of the master, kowtowed 3 times, and said respectfully, "Teacher. Silly boy, you just need to kowtow to your teacher. In this world, you only need to kowtow to the king and your parents. As for the teacher, you only need to bow." The master was very pleased that Tang San became his disciple. After Tang San finished kowtowing, he immediately pulled Tang San up and said to him, "Lin Ye, why don't you also become my teacher? Teacher knows so much and will definitely be able to help us become powerful soul masters." After paying homage to his master, Tang San suddenly turned to look at Lin Ye and made a serious suggestion. After hearing Tang San's words, the master also looked at Lin Ye. His eyes looked calm on the surface, but there was also expectation hidden in the depths of his eyes. "Lin Ye. Sorry, I refuse." Under the gaze of the master and Tang San, Lin Ye still shook his head and said softly for a long time. Perhaps this master did know a lot, but Lin Ye's physical fitness now far exceeds that of an adult because of the dragon elephant Pruchna Kung Fu. This master's research is based on ordinary people, and what he understands may not necessarily be applicable to Lin Ye. And to put it bluntly, the various studies that the master mentioned just now seem to sound very high level, and they all seem to be correct, but when it comes to Lin Ye, none of them are correct. Lin Ye couldn't believe such a teacher anyway. His knowledge may be considered correct for most ordinary people. But unfortunately, Lin Ye is not an ordinary person. The martial arts knowledge suitable for ordinary people may not be suitable for Lin Ye. And it's not that Lin Ye doesn't understand martial arts knowledge. Among the 2 books left by his father, one recorded knowledge about soul beasts, and the other recorded knowledge about the soul master world, including the knowledge about martial arts. Lin Ye did not need anyone else's teaching. As for the cultivation of soul power, with the 4 martial arts left by his father, Lin Ye didn't need anyone else's guidance. From this point of view, it is obvious that no matter how you look at it, Lin Ye has no need to become a disciple. Because I have no parents since I was a child, I only have my grandfather Jack. Grandpa Jack has always been busy, so Lin Ye has had more time to think since he was a child, so he has developed the habit of independent thinking and will never blindly follow other people's advice. Especially when it comes to major matters, Lin Ye has always believed in being cautious and prudent, and making decisions after careful consideration. The matter of becoming a disciple is undoubtedly a relatively important matter. Lin Ye, if you think about it again, the teacher knows so much, he will definitely be able to help us. Hearing Lin Yi's refusal, Tang San persuaded with some reluctance. But Lin Ye was extra determined. Tang San, I'm sorry, thank you for your kindness, but I don't want to become a disciple so early yet. Lin Ye. Tang San wanted to persuade him again. But aside, the master who had been silent for a long time suddenly shook his head. Xiao San, don't force it. Your name is Lin Ye, right? I know that we have only met once. It is indeed too early to talk about apprenticeship, but apprenticeship is very important. If you don't have a teacher to guide you, you will have to wait a long time to hunt for soul rings. If you don't want to be my teacher for a long time, I can introduce you to a teacher who has a high status in the college and should be able to meet your requirements. Looking at Lin Ye, the master put his right hand behind his back and his left hand in front of his abdomen, and spoke slowly. Master, thank you for your kindness, but for my martial soul, I want to choose my own soul ring. Lin Ye still shook his head. Lin Ye. On the side, Tang San was a little anxious. But seeing Lin Yi's firm eyes, the master fell silent. He thought of himself when he was young, with the same firm eyes, the same refusal to succumb to the world, the same refusal to hit the wall and never look back. Therefore, the master sighed, Lin Ye, hunting soul beasts is not a simple matter. Soul beasts are very powerful creatures that cannot be hunted by ordinary people. And if you choose the wrong soul ring, your future may be ruined. I hope you will seriously consider it. Let's do this. These are some notes I summarized on research related to soul beasts, soul rings, and martial arts. You can take it back and read it. If you don't understand anything, you can ask me. As for how to find me, you can just ask Tang San. When I take Tang San to hunt the spirit beasts, if you don't mind, you can come with us. As the master spoke, he took out a notebook and handed it to Lin Ye. Looking at the notes in front of him, the cautious Lin Ye wanted to decline. Because Grandpa Jack once said that the most difficult thing in the world to repay is a debt of gratitude. But when I think about the matter of soul beasts and soul rings, what is recorded in the book is not specific. Lin Ye thought about it, hesitated, and then took the note. Thank you, Master. Chapter 23. The area occupied by Notting College is actually not large. After walking through the gate, under the leadership of the master, he walked through a tree-lined avenue, and a tall teaching building suddenly appeared in front of Lin Ye. Come with me. Seeing the teaching building appearing in front of him, the master turned his head and said something. Then, he walked towards an office on the first floor of the teaching building, which was the registration office for new students. Arriving at the office, the master opened the door. Crunch! As the office door was pushed open, the scene inside the office suddenly came into Lin Yi's eyes. I saw that the office was very clean and tidy. A pot of green plants was placed at the door, and several desks were placed at the innermost part of the office. Behind the desks, 2 young people and an older middle-aged man were sitting. Year man. Master, why are you here? You are such a rare visitor. Please sit down, please sit down. Seeing the master come in, the middle-aged man sitting behind the desk couldn't help but stood up in surprise, and then greeted the master warmly with a smile. No need, Director Su, I brought these 2 children in to sign up. In response to Director Su's enthusiasm, the master calmly shook his head and pointed to Lin Ye and Tang San beside him. After hearing the master's words and noticing Lin Ye and Tang San beside him, Director Su couldn't help but look surprised. This lonely master actually brought 2 children to register today. The sun really came out in the west. However, although he was surprised, Director Su still showed enthusiasm on his face, and he laughed and said, Don't worry, Master, leave the registration of these 2 children to me. Well, I'll trouble you, Director Su. These 2 children are both work-study students. One is from Saint Soul Village and the other is from Daoxiang Village. This is their martial arts proof. I have something else to do, so I'll leave first. The master nodded, took a step forward, handed the 2 martial spirit certificates in his hand to Director Su, then turned and walked towards the door. When passing by Tang San, the master paused, turned to Tang San and said, Xiaosan, please register here first. The 3 teachers will tell you exactly how to do it. I have to leave for a while if I have something to do. I will come back to you later. Is teacher? Tang San said respectfully. Hearing Tang San call him teacher, the master couldn't help but have a stiff smile on his face. After touching Tang San's head, he walked out of the office. Watching the master's back leave, Tang San turned around. Not far away, Director Su's somewhat confused voice came. Child, your name is Tang San, right? You just called me master teacher. Master is not the teacher of our academy. I know. Tang San nodded. You know you still call me teacher, but teacher is not something you call casually. Director Su still frowned a little. Tang San has already worshipped the master as his disciple. On the side, Lin Ye spoke slowly. Did you become a master? Hearing Lin Yi's words, not only Director Su, but also the other two teachers behind the desk couldn't help but look shocked and incredulous. Then after looking at each other, the two young teachers couldn't help but burst out laughing. Haha! Is there any mistake? Someone actually worships the master as his disciple. This is so funny. The two teachers burst into laughter, as if they had heard something very funny. Listening to the words of the two teachers, Lin Ye couldn't help but frown. Master, is there any problem? Just when Lin Ye was confused, Director Su suddenly scolded, Why are you laughing? The master is a friend of the dean. Even if you look at the entire Soul Master world, he is a famous figure. You can laugh. Director Su, are you exaggerating? The master is well known, but is he a famous big shot? Haha, I'm afraid he is a famous clown. At such an old age, he is only a 29th level Soul Master. His martial soul is better than useless martial arts. The soul is not much better, and its combat power is pitifully low. Is this famous? And his theory of the 10 core competitiveness of martial souls is simply a joke in the world of Soul Masters. Hearing Director Su's scolding, a teacher was very unconvinced. Indeed. Indeed. Another teacher echoed in agreement. Shut up, everyone. There are still people here. Give master some face, otherwise when the dean comes to find you, don't blame me for not warning you. With a vague glance at the expressionless Lin Ye and the vaguely angry Tang San, Director Su scolded them in a low voice. After hearing Director Su's words, the two teachers seemed to have thought of something and suddenly smiled. Register me quickly. Seeing that the two teachers were finally at peace, Director Su breathed a sigh of relief and immediately handed over the two martial arts certificates in his hands. Great Soul Master? This seems to be the 3rd level of Soul Master. Is the Master's strength only the 29th level Great Soul Master? This is indeed a bit low. On the side, after listening to the conversation between Director Su and the two teachers, Lin Ye frowned slightly and couldn't help but think in his heart. However, although Lin Ye also thought that the Master's strength was a bit low, but Lin Ye still had a certain positive impression of the Master. After all, when he was in front of the gate, the Master gave him a notebook. Although it may not be useful, it is still kind at least, and he also said that he would take him to hunt the soul beasts together. However, if the Master really only has the strength of a great Soul Master, and the two teachers said that his martial soul is almost useless, it may be a bit difficult to help him hunt the soul beasts and obtain the soul ring. But being able to be called a master and become friends with the Dean of Notting College, a master must still have a certain amount of energy. Just finding a place to hunt soul beasts shouldn't be a problem. Listening to the two teachers belittling the master, Lin Ye actually felt a little uncomfortable. Not because of the close relationship with the master, but because Lin Ye owed the master a favor. Listening to others belittling the master, Lin Ye wanted to take action and return the favor. But when I thought about it, the two of them had nothing to do with each other. On the contrary, Tang San was the master's disciple. Tang San didn't make a move. Due to both emotion and reason, Lin Ye couldn't bear to overstep his will, so after thinking about it, Lin Ye still held back. Two innate souls with full soul power. Just as Lin Ye was thinking about it, suddenly, there was a burst of exclamation in the office, and the two young teachers who registered the registration information showed a look of shock at the same time. Innately full of soul power. On the side, Director Su was also shocked and looked at the registration information forms in the hands of the two teachers. Hey! Although I was born with full soul power, it's a pity that my martial souls are all useless. Now I finally know why the master accepted you two as his disciples. After putting down the registration form, a teacher shook his head and sighed with a strange look on his face. Teacher, I don't worship the master as my teacher. Lin Ye was silent for a moment and then said. Haha, maybe I remembered it wrong. After hearing Lin Ye's words and being slapped in the face, the teacher couldn't help but smile. But given the conditions you two have, the master is really suitable for you too as a useless martial soul with full innate soul power. After all, the master is indeed very famous in the research of martial arts. You should follow his theories. Maybe you can really find a path to becoming a strong person. As if he thought of something, the teacher's eyes were a little strange. Hey! Please don't teach people randomly, okay? Although the martial arts of these two little guys are useless martial arts, they are born with full soul power. This is a legendary talent. Their speed in practice is absolutely amazing. If they can become powerful, if there are teachers who can help hunt soul beasts and absorb soul rings, they may be stronger than us in the future. Another teacher frowned and interrupted. 2. But listening to the words of the two teachers, Lin Ye was a little silent. Tang San's blue-silver grass martial spirit may really be a waste martial spirit, but he has already tested his 9 spirits Xian Tang. This is definitely not a useless martial spirit, but an extremely powerful auxiliary martial spirit. Chapter 24. Okay, your registration information has been registered. This is your martial soul certificate. In the registration office, after the two teachers registered Lin Ye and Tang San's information, Director Su handed back their martial arts certificates and said. And after seeing Lin Ye and Tang San put away the martial spirit certificates, Director Su bent down again, took out 2 packages from under the table, and handed them to Lin Ye and Tang San again. These are daily necessities distributed by the college for free, including college uniforms and toiletries. Your dormitory is in the 7th dormitory building on the east side of the teaching building. After you pass there, the college will have teachers to arrange your work as a work-study student. Director Su said again. Thank you, Director Su. After taking the package, Lin Ye thanked him politely. On the side, Tang San, who received the package, also politely thanked him. Tang San still had a good impression of Director Su because of Director Su's righteous speech to the master just now. You're welcome. Okay, you can go over there and remember to study hard. Director Su smiled and waved his hand, while Lin Ye and Tang San turned around and walked out of the registration office. After leaving the registration office, Lin Ye quickly discovered the dormitory building located on the east side of the teaching building according to Director Su's previous words. Because there are not many tall buildings in the entire Notting College, and Director Su has mentioned the direction before, it is easy to distinguish them. Having found the target, Lin Ye immediately walked over, with Tang San following behind. After walking through a corridor, passing through a grove of green trees, and walking on a cobblestone path, the two finally arrived in front of the dormitory building. The dormitory building in front of us has a total of 6 floors. From left to right, there are hangings on the doors, dormitory number 1, dormitory number 2, and dormitory number 3. Therefore, Lin Ye guessed at once that the 7th house should be dormitory building number 7, and the corresponding floor should be on the 3rd floor. So, Lin Ye took the lead towards the stairs, and after going up 2 floors in a row, he finally reached the 3rd floor. As soon as we arrived on the 3rd floor, there was a burst of children's laughter and noise from the corridor. Lin Ye turned around and looked around, and saw the first dormitory that caught his eye. The sign hanging on the door clearly had the words dormitory number 7 engraved on it. Is this the Kisha? Lin Ye couldn't help but think to himself. Let's go there. After turning around and saying something to Tang San, Lin Ye walked towards Kishi. Tang San, on the other hand, looked left and right, observing his surroundings, slightly behind Lin Ye. Maybe it's because there are no other dormitories on the 3rd floor except for the 7th dormitory. With all the children in Kishi in the dormitory, the corridor seemed very quiet, so after Lin Ye stepped into the corridor, the sound of footsteps sounded, and everything in Kishi suddenly became quiet. Can I come in please? Arriving at Kishi's door, Lin Ye knocked on the door and said calmly. Hey? You're not a teacher. Suddenly, there was a sound of surprise in Kishi, and then there was a sound of relief. Come in. Hearing the sound, Lin Ye opened the door and walked in, followed by Tang San. After entering Kishi, the scene inside Kishi immediately caught Lin Ye's eyes. This is a very spacious room, covering an area of about 300 square meters. There are more than 50 beds in it, but less than half of them have bedding. At this moment, 7 or 8 children were sitting on the bed in the dormitory, all watching Lin Ye and Tang San coming in. The age of these 7 or 8 children is very mixed, ranging from 6 to 11 or 12 years old. This kind of dormitory is obviously a mixed dormitory. Are you new work-study students? After looking at Lin Ye and Tang San, one of the 7 or 8 children who looked older spoke up and asked. However, it may be because Lin Ye looks more eye-catching, seems to have a higher status, and Lin Ye's aura is also very calm, so the older child's attention is focused on Lin Ye. Well, we are both work-study students. My name is Lin Ye and he is Tang San. We are both from Holy Soul Village. Lin Ye nodded very indifferently, introduced himself, then pointed at Tang San and introduced. Hello, I'm Tang San. After Lin Ye made the introduction, Tang San smiled and said hello. Lin Ye, Tang San? Okay, I remember. After listening to Lin Ye and Tang San's self-introductions, the older child nodded. Okay, now that you have introduced yourselves, let me sit down and introduce myself. My name is Wang Sheng, Wuhan Zanhu, I am the future battle soul master and the boss here. The young man named Wang Sheng stood up from the bed, introduced himself, and made punching and kicking gestures. When it was mentioned that his martial spirit was the war tiger, Wang Sheng also directly summoned the martial spirit. I saw a pale yellow tiger shadow suddenly emerge from his body, and then let out a roar, and a faint wave of soul power suddenly swept out in all directions, with some inexplicable power. However, Lin Ye's face remained unmoved. Noticing that neither Lin Ye nor Tang San was intimidated by his own martial arts, Wang Sheng couldn't help but be a little surprised. Okay, I have introduced myself. Although you have introduced yourselves just now, you did not say your martial arts. This is against the rules. Please introduce yourselves again according to the format of what I just said. Wang Sheng said after taking back the fighting tiger spirit. Is there still such a rule? Tang San was a little surprised. However, Lin Ye held the package calmly and said calmly while walking towards an empty bed, My name is Lin Ye, Wuhan Begonia Flower. After Lin Ye put the package on the bed, Tang San came back to his senses, smiled, and said, My name is Tang San, and my martial spirit is blue silver grass. You too, are you kidding me? But after Lin Ye and Tang San introduced themselves, Wang Sheng seemed to have heard something very funny and couldn't help but burst into laughter. One martial spirit is a begonia flower, and the other is a blue silver grass. These seem to be useless martial arts that can be seen everywhere, right? It's really strange that they can still have soul power. But since both of your martial arts spirits are useless, I don't need to waste any more effort. You two will be my little brothers from now on. You will do what I say, do you understand? After learning about Lin Ye and Tang San's martial arts, Wang Sheng couldn't help pinching his waist, pointing at Lin Ye, and then at Tang San, speaking very arrogantly. Sorry, I just want to learn the knowledge of soul masters here, and I don't want to be a little brother. Regarding Wang Sheng's words, Lin Ye's face remained unmoved. He just opened the package he brought, took out the toiletries inside, and placed them neatly on the table next to the bed. What? How dare you ignore the boss? Hearing Lin Ye's words, other children on the side couldn't help shouting. Boss, this guy is ignorant and dares to ignore our Kishi rules. Let him know how powerful you are. Humph. You are a guy with thin skin and tender flesh, just like a noble. You don't have much strength, and you still have a useless martial spirit. You dare to be so arrogant. I will let you be my little brother. What's wrong? Under the instigation of his younger brother, Wang Sheng immediately snorted coldly and walked directly towards Lin Ye, reaching out and preparing to push Lin Ye. Chapter 25. While arranging toiletries, he noticed Wang Sheng walking behind him. When Wang Sheng stretched out his hand to push, Lin Ye's eyes moved and he grabbed Wang Sheng's hand with his backhand. You still want to resist? Seeing that Lin Ye dared to resist, Wang Sheng couldn't help but show a vicious expression, and he used force to break away from Lin Ye's hand and push Lin Ye down. But when he noticed Wang Sheng's movements, Lin Ye frowned. Although he doesn't like to cause trouble, he will never be afraid of trouble if others dare to bully him. When Wang Sheng was trying to break free, Lin Ye directly grabbed Wang Sheng's wrist and exerted force as if swinging a forging hammer. He instantly pulled Wang Sheng up from the ground, swung it round and hit him. On the ground. Lin Ye's strength was so great. After practicing Dragon Elephant Prujna Kung Fu, the strength of raising one arm exceeds 1,000 kilograms. Even with less than a quarter of the strength, it was easy to lift an 11 or 12-year-old boy like Wang Sheng. When Lin Ye grabbed his hand, Wang Sheng was ready to resist, but before he could exert any force, an unstoppable force suddenly came from his wrist and he was thrown away. In an instant, the world was spinning, and Wang Sheng was directly hit to the ground. Boom! Along with a crisp sound, Wang Sheng felt a pain in his back. He couldn't help but let out a muffled groan and curled up under the pain. However, because he had soul power to protect his body and Lin Ye kept his hand, he did not use too much force. Therefore, although Wang Sheng felt pain in his back, he was not actually injured. "You guy, how dare you hit me?" After Lin Ye let go of his hand, Wang Sheng immediately got up from the ground. Feeling the pain in his back, he couldn't help but said angrily, and then rushed towards Lin Ye. "Go to hell!" Looking at Lin Ye, Wang Sheng roared and swung his right fist hard towards Lin Ye. With the blessing of soul power, the strength of Wang Sheng's punch even surpassed that of an adult. His fist broke through the air and made a dull whistling sound in the air. However, facing the punch thrown by Wang Sheng, Lin Ye looked calm and stretched out his hand to catch the punch. Then he swung out a palm with his other hand, suddenly hitting Wang Sheng's chest, and instantly sent Wang Sheng flying away. After Wang Sheng flew high, he hit a bed hard, knocking over the entire bed, and he fell directly onto the overturned bed. The injury on his back hadn't healed yet, and he was slammed into the bed again. The injury was added to the injury, and Wang Sheng's entire face was twisted in pain. "Boss!" Seeing Wang Sheng being slapped away by Lin Ye in a frontal battle, the children around him couldn't help but exclaimed in disbelief. "Hiss! Ouch!" Holding the bed with his hands, Wang Sheng rubbed his back and gasped for air. He climbed up from the overturned bed covered with dust in embarrassment. Looking at Lin Ye again, Wang Sheng couldn't help but have a flash of fear in his eyes. If he had thought that Lin Ye was making a sneak attack before, but when he punched with all his strength, Lin Ye easily blocked it, and he was even slapped and sent flying. Now, Wang Sheng finally knew that Lin Ye was not simple. "Lin Ye, is your martial spirit really the begonia flower?" After rubbing his still aching back and looking at Lin Ye, Wang Sheng looked a little confused and couldn't help but ask tentatively. "My martial spirit is indeed the begonia flower. You should be convinced now, right?" Regarding Wang Sheng's question, Lin Ye stretched out his hand to summon the begonia flower and said calmly. "It turns out to be really a begonia flower, but it looks a little different from the begonia flowers I have seen before. Is this a mutated martial spirit? Is it because it is a mutated martial spirit that it has such great strength?" Seeing the Zhuling Xiantang in Lin Yi's hand, Wang Sheng couldn't help but said to himself in shock. "Lin Ye, according to the rules of our Kishi, now that you defeat me, you will be the boss of our Kishi from now on." Having made a decision in his heart, Wang Sheng suddenly looked up at Lin Ye and said seriously. "You just provoked me just to test my strength." Lin Ye seemed to have thought of something in his mind, and Lin Ye couldn't help but frown. "Haha, this is the rule of our Kisha. This is how we all came here." Wang Sheng scratched his head in embarrassment and smiled. "I can be your boss, but I probably won't stay in the academy for too long. Is that okay?" Lin Ye thought for a moment and then said. "You won't stay in our college for too long?" "Boss, what do you mean? You just entered school and you didn't graduate so early. Do you plan to transfer to other Soul Master colleges in the future?" Wang Sheng couldn't help but be surprised when he heard Lin Yi's words. "No, I don't plan to transfer to another school." Lin Ye shook his head. "Why?" Wang Sheng couldn't help but ask again. On the side, Tang San also walked over, obviously very confused about Lin Yi's words. "I was born with full soul power. According to the requirements of the Junior Soul Master Academy, I can graduate as long as I am promoted to Soul Master. So I plan to leave the academy to practice after I am promoted to Soul Master and after I have learned some basic knowledge taught in the academy." Lin Ye replied slowly. "Are you born with full soul power?" Hearing Lin Yi's words, Wang Sheng and all the children from Kishi couldn't help but widen their eyes at the same time, and their hearts were filled with shock. Innately full of soul power, this is a top talent that has always existed only in legends. They actually met a soul master with innate soul power? Is it strange that you are born with full soul power? Seeing Wang Sheng and all the children in shock, Lin Ye said calmly. "Weird. Of course this is strange, this is full of innate soul power." Wang Sheng muttered to himself in shock. "Innately full of soul power? Haha, in fact, Tang San was also born with full soul power." Pointing at Tang San, Lin Ye smiled lightly. "What? Tang San, you are also innately full of soul power?" Hearing Lin Ye say that Tang San was also born with full soul power, Wang Sheng felt a rush of old blood rush up his throat. For a moment, I couldn't say anything, only the envy, jealousy and hatred welling up in my heart. Well, I am also born with full soul power. Tang San smiled modestly, as if he didn't care about this at all. Seeing Lin Ye and Tang San's reactions, Wang Sheng couldn't help but roar in his heart. There were literally 10,000 Hempai batches in his heart that he didn't know whether to say or not. Please. This is full of innate soul power. No matter what, I feel like I don't care. Since you don't care so much, then give it all to me, give it all to me. Wang Sheng shed tears of envy and jealousy in his heart. Wang Sheng, let's do this. When I leave from now on, Tang San will be your second boss. How about that? After pondering for a while, Lin Ye asked. Because they knew that Lin Ye and Tang San were both innately full of soul power, Wang Sheng and the children from Kishi were still in a daze, so they all answered numbly. Lin Ye, what's the boss? I can't be the boss. After hearing Lin Ye's words, Tang San couldn't help but hurriedly excuse himself. Tang San, you are innately full of soul power. You should be able to obtain a soul ring soon. You are more than enough to be our boss. Don't worry, we won't object. After coming back to his senses, Wang Sheng sighed and said with complicated eyes. Yet. The other children echoed. Tang San wanted to say something else, but Lin Ye frowned and interrupted Tang San. What the hell? Tang San, we are electing you to be the boss, not asking you to be the younger brother. You only need to stand up for us Kishi people and be the boss when the time is right. At other times, you don't have to do anything. On the contrary, it shouldn't be troublesome to have someone be your little brother, right? Then, okay then. Having said this, Tang San could only sigh helplessly and chose to agree.